and not. But they'll transfer you back real quick. But some phones just
And that's YouTube.
go over there.
Yeah. Another thing to think about when you're
We had some.
receiving distress.
That's why I got dispatch programmed in there, because that's, I always call this dispatch.
So is this
And
one?
they tore our
That's
sign up.
essentially just as good as calling 911 usually. Goes to the same place, doesn't it? I believe. That's why I got dispatch programmed in there. Oh. That's, I always call this dispatch.
So is this one?
Goodness, distorted, as good as calling 911 usually.
Oh, yeah.
Goes to the same place, doesn't it?
That one X right there. Yeah.
I'm sure he has it.
Nothing's confidential there though. That, some of that is complete knowledge, some people pick up on it.
Randy, I think was his deployed.
Sound like the Terminator talking.
Is that,
Voice. Sit at the end.
It's 4 o'clock and the meeting is called.
I can tie my shoes.
Next is approval of minutes for October 12th, 2022. Is there a motion?
motion to approve the minutes?
Is there any discussion or any changes or additions to be made? Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes, raise your hand. All those opposed? None. So the minutes are approved as read. Are there any visitor comments? You have 3 minutes.
I'll wait till next meeting.
Got a lot to get out of your chest.
Okay, next we're on to new business, and there's a discussion on House Bill 3115. Jacob?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to give an introduction to this. I know you've heard a little bit about it here and there. I think one of our planning commissioners discussed it with you. There's 2 maps in the packet. And if you could start with the one after the one that's shown there. And the documents are large compared to the other pages. We'll talk about that briefly. So House Bill 3115, this is some Oregon law that affects how jurisdictions handle camping. With particular regard to camping people who are homeless. It's not a new issue, it's an ongoing issue. And it's not just this Oregon bill that applies. There's been some ongoing court cases. It's passed back to 2018. And then there's also an Eighth Amendment element to it against cruel, unusual punishment. And in this case, the cruel and unusual punishment has to do with someone's biological need to sleep. But what the Oregon bill does is it ups the ante in that attorney fees can be awarded if you do things not quite right. And so cities have to be careful about enforcement. And so this is all about the ability to enforce camping. And if you were going to boil it down to a simple statement, you would want to think about it as no punishment without a destination. So that's very important, no punishment without a destination. And that destination is supposed to be within city limits. So this bill applies to public property open to the general public. And an obvious category of that is the parks, and that's what you oversee. Now, ultimately, this is a complex issue, ultimately going to go to the council, and the council usually takes recommendations from the various boards and bodies that help it do its work. And that's why I'm here, just to help you think about it. You have it easy in that your scope is the parks and the parks only. Now, what could happen in other places could affect the parks, but essentially your area is the parks. And this map I created so it's good to understand where. And see city limits is kind of in a yellow shading. But more importantly, you can see city-owned property in red, county-owned property in orange. Because of Dalton Lake, I put ODOT-owned property too, because I know that's an area of concern for this group. And you can see the parks highlighted by kind of a light green. Now, my assumption is that the committee or the commission would still hold to no camping in city parks right now, because you close your parks at night, that essentially prohibits it. There's nothing that explicitly says camping is prohibited in parks, and that could be something we end up doing. I was just looking at some other examples, and several cities have highlighted the areas where camping is not allowed, so those are ruled out, and parks could fall into that. So really, that's the key question for this group, is if you hold on to that. And it's not an answer that we need today. This is an ongoing thing, and this bill takes effect in the middle of next year. But at least I wanted to help plant the seed of thought and discussion. And maybe it's a simple discussion, yeah, except for St. Island, we just don't want to have more camping. But it was important and something to let you know about. Thankfully, the League of Oregon Cities will make it a priority for next session. And another thing just to be aware of, this is a new body of law. So if you compare it with something like search and seizures, search and seizure case law has evolved over multiple decades. And so attorneys and folks have a pretty good idea of where that stuff's gonna land. For this issue, we don't have decades of case law to rely on. And so it's a new thing. Luckily, we're not like some of the coastal cities that have already been dealing with this as a problem. We're not really a destination, so to speak. But still, we want to be prepared and have our ordinances up to date as possible. The other map, I want to just, so you can understand the applicability of this. I took that same map and I just took the aerial photo away, and I wanted you to be able to see the public rights of way a little bit better. There's a yellow shading on the other map where you can kind of see them. In this case, they really stick out, especially if you look at the grid pattern on the east side of town. So in addition to city-owned or county-owned property, public-owned property those rights of way would be included as well. Typically, those rights of way are where there are streets, and so it would be obvious as a public space, but some of them are undeveloped. Especially with this grid pattern and the topography we have where roads don't make sense. But really, that's what I wanted to cover. Again, just to reiterate, your recommendation is about parks and camping in the parks and how it applies to this greater effort. And I should point out that these bills do not require us to provide shelters. It's not a mandate. It's about enforcement and having a place to go. You have any questions?
A little bit. I mean, I'd love to see it stay that way in all parks. If it becomes a thing where we have to decide, depending upon the type of park it is, some parks could be and some parks couldn't be.
Sure.
If we had one that was more sensitive, I mean, McCormick Park, we technically did have some campsites in there at one time. So the precedent has been set there already. Now, I mean, I don't want to sound bad, but someplace like Nob Hill, where we've got lots of plantings and there's sensitive areas and lands in there. That's not a good place you would ever have people want to start camping because you could trample the vegetation that the park is there for. So that'd just be my comment. The other one too is, once again, I noticed the way that we discussed when you guys created Nob Hill formally when we rezoned that area, that still the streets are shown. I'd love to get rid of the streets going through the park.
The rights of way, not the streets.
Oh, yeah, okay, right, the right of ways. Because I mean, it's such a small little park, if anybody ever built one of those streets through there, gotta just destroy that area. So that's just my comments.
Yeah, we have a couple parts like City Pride Park has some rights of way through it. Godfrey used to, but those were vacated.
Because you were saying a minute ago with the rights of way, that somebody could look at this map and go, well, wait a second, part of that area isn't a park, but then there's technically some rights of way through
It's
there.
also a right of way,
So if
so
I could find that, then I could be legal to be in there.
not necessarily. I think if the ordinance is explicit about no parks and like undeveloped rights of way, that's just how we craft the language, if we get to that point.
Okay.
But I mean, Howard brings up a good point. If you're open to having some parks and not others, or your priority parks, that's certainly a discussion, or just,
Or that on it.
or it's just simple, that it simply shouldn't be in parks. And I spent some time today looking at other ordinances, and that seems to be pretty common. There's also ones protecting watersheds, staying away from creeks and like that, which kind of relates to your sensitive lands concern example.
The only exception I would see appropriate would be Sand Island. I think even camping was allowed in one time in McCormick Park, but I think it was a disaster. And I would not,
Well, the homeless people
I wouldn't
took it over that.
go that route again. I think,
Yeah.
I would think Sand Island would be our best bet.
For camping, you mean,
For camping.
for these people to come and camp that way,
Camping in general, yeah,
or structured like it is right now.
yeah.
Yeah, you kind of have the infrastructure in place with the permitting, or just working with Sand Island and that stuff. Plus, it's, not the easiest to get to once you have a boat, so.
Looks like Paul might have something. Oh,
No,
sorry.
yeah.
Paul, can you hear us?
So while Paul's trying to get figured out, basically this is a primer. This is a discussion that will probably evolve over the next year. And I just wanted to help you start thinking about it.
My suggestion, knowing how government works and seeing what happened to Portland, is don't open the door.
Yep.
Do not even go there, because if you go to one place and invite people in, oh my, it's like a cancer. It's just going to spread so fast. And look what's happening in Portland now, because they just opened the door for a little bit. And look what's happened. It's costing multi-millions of dollars. It's running businesses out of town. It's running people out of town. It's not a safe place to be in so many ways. So make certain you keep that in mind. If there's a footnote, come up with some real solutions of places that can be available, and it doesn't have to be in the city limits. It's something that maybe it should be or whatever, but it doesn't have to be. It could be on port property as well, but I'm not certain. I would do everything I could not to open the door. And because that's, you have to have a lot of skill to, and a lot of money to police all of that and to maintain whatever you open up to. And I don't think that's going to, I don't think there's enough resources to deal with it at this point.
Well, I think the terminology in it says objectively reasonable. And you can use that, it's a two-way street. You can use it for ourselves, saying it's objectively reasonable that, for instance, where you're talking about Grants Pass, with the court determination there. At that time, they had like 600, if I recall correctly, $600. It'd be 10 times the amount of what would be average for across the US. I was talking about this. In fact, Brad and I were on a subcommittee, what would be called? The planning commission with Stephen Tosky as the impetus of it, discussing this, and this is what I brought up before during that discussion was that, with the population of homes, if we were to take all the homeless across the US, we'd only have 25 altogether for our allotment with the number of people that are homeless. This is, a couple of years ago, but that just, we're trying to be objectively reasonable. And that's, metrics is one way to go about it.
But I would add, the Oregon bill says objectively, the word that I can't pronounce right now, reasonable, from the eyes of the person experiencing homelessness. So that's the way it phrases it.
Well, you also say it's reasonable for them, but it also has to be reasonable for the other party, because the reasonableness is, there has to be some type of limitation to it, and that limitation would be the other party that you're interacting with, which in this case would be the city.
Yeah, it's a potential delicate balance. Hopefully, we're not in a position where our backs are against the wall. But that's partly why we have the goal of writing good policy.
I used to work in public health, and it's actually a public health hazard. When you go down to Portland and you see people camping in the parks, they don't have the facilities that they need. And it's just, it's a huge problem. And yes, we feel for the people that need to be out there or choose to be out there, or it doesn't matter. But it also is a big health hazard. And you have to also think, okay, if you do open the door, who in the city of St. Helens, what department is going to be responsible for cleanup? That's going to be necessary. And how much money do you have allotted for that?
I strongly feel that it isn't a matter over people's heads or whatever, or any kind of physical problem that way. I think it indeed is a mental issue. It's a mindset for people to be kind of where they're at. And we do need to help those people, but in different ways other than building shelters. That's where the reach out should come. But strong about that.
So, there'll be discussions. I may come back and we kind of have to see how it unfolds. It's fairly early on in the discussion, although I think we've discussed it more than any other jurisdiction in the county. Shauna gets an update whenever, at least twice a month, when we have our supervisor meeting. So we'll make sure she's up to date on our efforts too. And then if we need to come back to work out greater details, it's easy enough.
I'm impressed. You're working with it. You're looking at it.
I mean, should we start identifying places? Because I think that's one of the requirements of having a place for people to actually be able to camp. If we have to have a place for that, it seems like.
Well, it's, no enforcement without a place to go. And, it got me wondering if we should run scenarios. Okay, well, 10 people showed up and went here. What's the drill? What do we do with that in light of this?
Well, from what I understand is that there is a need, maybe a need to set aside some property for homeless camping.
Yeah, so that becomes the question. So then do you have a managed system or not? So a lot of cities are saying these are the places you can't go. Rather than saying these are the places you can go.
Or this is the place you can go.
Yeah.
These are the
But
places.
that becomes the fine line, because if you have a single place, that becomes a congregation. And now are you forcing a managed system? And that's just what we talked about in this discussion. If it's managed, then it does become a location mecca and then doesn't become an attractant.
As Doug was saying, you don't want to open the door.
We could be better off just saying there's no camping in our public parks and they're closed at dusk, and that kind of makes it hard to be in there.
Yeah, to focus on the parks. And remember, that's kind of this group's focus is the parks.
Yeah.
It all
That's
comes
why.
together, but ultimately the recommendation from this body
Yeah.
is the parks.
So what's to keep people out of this street? This street between Columbia Boulevard and the street right up here. There's an 80-foot right of way behind Columbia View Tavern. And it runs I see that as if I was homeless and I knew the rules, I would go there in a minute. Because you're close to resources and whatever. What's to keep people out of there? Oh, that'd be easy. City council, make it a park. I mean, and then that's exactly why I brought Nob Hill Nature Park onto the scene, because there were more mattresses and wash machines and beer bottles and old tires, everything. And it was just thrown all over everywhere. And then there was kids every Friday, Saturday night, I'm sure, big cake parties and all kinds of things. The police could not do a thing because it was surplus property. And what happens with the park, hey, there's an ordinance in place where the police can intervene and help people out. I'm not a person who kind of thinks that the police are there to bash heads and arrest people and that kind of thing. It's to help people out and give individuals resources if possible. So I kind of think that you're in a good place, city council, because there is that kind of card to play if need be. Another nature park, another mini park, something along the line. So I think there are avenues for imaginative thinking in government.
Or you just explicitly say undeveloped rights of way. There's a couple ways to do it.
So I can tell you some of the things that are being pushed forward is there is a few meetings with all community, county people who have a stakeholder in this to talk about what it's looking like for everyone. And then like Jacob said, you know, revising our ordinances to reflect what we want to see in our community. Is the next steps. I think there's a meeting next week, I believe. Anyways, Rachel's been heading those up with public health, CCMH, the county, and some others. So there is work being done behind the scenes too to see where everyone's at with this.
I just want to say, I know that the sheriff mentioned that even though they were short of staff, there's been a number of times where someone didn't have a place to go. And they had a relative maybe in Gobel, so they drive them over there, or even as far as Astoria and some other places. So they try to do that. You know, do you have a friend? Do you have a relative? Do you know? Yeah, it's a problem. If there's no other questions. Thank you so much, Jacob, for leading us on that. Appreciate it. Okay, next on new business is a mural and graffiti presentation.
Yes, thank you so much. And I'll try to be fast. There's quite a bit to it, but as quick as I can. So I did print out physical copies of the presentation. If you want to take a look at it. Screen viewing. And so this is just touching base and hopefully moving forward on the mural project that I just proposed in July. This is the first 3 slides here that we're gonna look at are just kind of a quick recap. They were at the end of my last presentation. And so regarding vandalism, we know Campbell Park has been the target of repeated acts of vandalism, incidents including people damage to the buildings, play structures, sports equipment, as well as graffiti on the buildings and other structures. Possible solutions that we had discussed prior were installing effective surveillance systems, tracking timing and frequency of incidents, increasing the presence of park staff, security, and or police. And then I put in some examples there of creating a sense of community ownership with preventing graffiti by ways of mural and art installations and utilizing the public there. And the next slide included a link to this kind of 10-step program that the Victorian government in Australia had put together on planning, implementing, and upkeeping their mural installations. So I've taken that 10-step plan as kind of a guide and I've adapted it for this purpose. And so we're going to go through that today. All right, so the step 1 would be identifying the site and getting permission. The next 3 pages are images of the 3 outbuildings that I would like to discuss, possibly putting art on. And it could be any or all of these building walls, but as you can see, this was the condition of them when I took photos over the summer. You can see some areas that have been painted and repainted. You can see some of the building is in a bit of disrepair, just in itself. And so while this is a highly used park, I feel like there's a bit of improvement that can be done on just on the look of the facilities and in their own. So this project can be multifactorial there, you know, increasing the beauty of the park and hopefully solving the vandalism. And this building here, the one with the windows that drop down, that's the concession building. I corrected that.
parks.
For the, okay,
Yeah,
so
The
one is
second
a-
picture and the third picture are softballs. Youth softballs buildings that we were there.
okay, perfect. And then the other is the bathroom facility.
Yeah.
So these will be the buildings that I'm specifically referring to. So what are the problems being addressed? So with recurring episodes of graffiti and acts of vandalism on buildings and equipment at Campbell Park, parks resources are being utilized for cleaning, repairing, and maintaining these sites. Actions taken thus far have not ended the issue. And I'd like to clarify today with the park staff on what other specific actions perhaps that have been taken thus far to quell the vandalism and graffiti.
So we have removed the little barriers that were in front of the restroom doors because a lot of people were hiding behind those when folks would come to Campbell Park. We also took out one of the benches in the bathrooms because kids were hanging out in there. Back the other day, they had gotten locked. Their stuff had gotten locked into the bathroom, so I go unlock it for them, and they had all of their snacks and everything that they were all hanging out in the bathroom. There's actually been some arrests that have happened, and so that has curbed a little bit of it. I am still working with IT on what a good solution for surveillance. Our issue there is there's just no internet access and trying to figure that out. So they've been looking into trail cams being an option, but just figuring out who's gonna monitor those, where they're gonna be placed, because we do have issues with kids climbing up on those buildings as well. So we just don't want them to come remove the trail cams off. So just figuring out what that looks like. So there has been a lot less vandalism there. And I think a lot of it has to do with some of the kids that were graffitiing there were also doing it at the middle school. And so we were able to put some cases together to do some of that. So, and then increased park staff doing loops around there, just especially during out of school time. We closed the bathrooms earlier there, which isn't the ideal solution, but it has curbed a lot of that as well. So yeah, those are the things that we've been working on, and talking to the neighbors too. If they see something, say something and call it in. And so I think they're feeling a lot more encouraged about that because they have a downtick in kids not doing the appropriate things that we want them to do at the parks.
Now, personally, I would love to see the bathroom facilities reopened and not closed, during times like I've heard some complaints, from people who do use the park of not being able to use the facilities at the times that they visit. And so personally, a side comment, that's one of my hopeful goals in the future is to not have to go to that as a resort for this. But I also note that a complete resolution may be unrealistic because, vandalism is an ongoing issue all over the place. And then I'd like to consider the following as far as like the impact on the local community, including perceptions of safety, and that's part of where the locking the bathroom facility falls for me. And then also, does this problem or proposed solutions provoke community involvement? And so things that we're doing to work with this issue, is it provoking the community to be involved in one way or another? Regarding permission, on the next page of the July 2022 Parks Commission meeting, verbal approval and permission was given by the commission members to pursue this project. And then I'd like to have some questions answered for myself moving forward today. And we can circle back to these at the end of the presentation regarding what permissions are required to move forward and put the plan into action in regards to park and city staff, city council, or other commissions and entities that may require permission to move forward with on this plan. We're going to talk about that at the end. So that's step one. Step two is defining the aim and objectives. And I've done a lot of work for the first several steps. The later steps and more guidelines that I haven't gotten to yet. So what is the aim of the project? I two clear kind of objectives here. The first one would be preventing graffiti and vandalism. This would be measured by a decrease in the frequency of the acts and a decrease in the time and money spent on repairs and graffiti removal by the city park staff. The second objective would be building long-term relationships with the community. This would be measured by an increase in usage of the park and facilities by community members, as well as an increased frequency of volunteer hours spent in the park by community members. And these are objectives that are measurable. We can put timelines on them. We can, obtain information to support whether or not those are being successful. And so how will the objectives be achieved? So involvement of individuals who utilize the park, especially those at risk of performing acts of vandalism. And so working directly with the youth that have been involved in these particular acts, I think is going to be very important in further reduction of the occurrence of graffiti acts. Installation and maintenance of murals or paintings on the exterior of the buildings. And then one suggestion that I received from the community, and this is coming directly from an at-risk youth who was involved in local graffiti acts, would be an installation of what's called a free wall, or a location that is a legal location for artists or graffiti artists to utilize. This is an example that's in place throughout the world. Actually, there's a worldwide network of these free walls. You can go online and find them. There's only 3 that I could find that are active in the state of Oregon. And there's not a lot of good information for them, so I couldn't really put it into the PowerPoint for you guys, but that is something that exists. It's a possible option that in addition to the murals and providing this beautiful deterrent on these physical buildings, it's not going to fix the long-term issue. These kids have the need to express and the need to create this art in the first place. And so providing a location that is that, hey, this is your, this is your wall and you can do what you want with it as long as it's within these obscenities, that kind of stuff. Having rules in place is really helpful. But what seems to happen is that those locations get utilized and there's less vandalism in the other locations. And there's a lot of respect amongst the artists who work on them. So that is a conversation that I had recently. I thought it was an interesting possible kind of add on to this project. It's not the main focus of this project, just to be clear. Regarding benchmark data for future evaluation, the progress and efficacy of the project should be evaluated periodically. This would require baseline data to be collected and used for future comparison. And so this, I may require you guys for some help here. And so the baseline data that I'm looking for would be current and previous costs of repairs and for repairs and graffiti removal, crime data related to the acts of vandalism, and documented community complaints related to the issue, as well as public perception of the park. And once we reach to that kind of baseline information, we can compare that in the future. See if the project is working. So step 3, who should be involved? So roles and responsibilities for this kind of a project, to be split up amongst many people. It's kind of multifaceted. But in the example from Australia, they were so focused on the youth involvement, and I really loved that because they understood that the cause of this problem is also the solution of the problem, right? And I'd really like to kind of honor that. So engaging young people early aids in the success of the project. Involving the youth with parental and guardian consent in project development, planning, design, and installation maximizes their motivation to participate and increases their sense of ownership of the project and its results. So involvement in the project can have a positive impact on youth motivation, confidence, sense of pride, and belonging in the community itself, and provide a creative outlet and pathway for young people into legal artwork, like legal ways of expressing. Stronger community partnerships lead to increased ownership of the projects and offer more sustainable crime prevention solutions. Nonprofits, schools, small businesses, youth service networks, and juvenile justice should all be engaged in the project. Local police involvement can aid in clear lines of communication and enhance the educational aspects of the project. And this can include youth probation and others. So it doesn't necessarily have to be police officers themselves. This is a list of the current interested participants that I've gotten permission to include. So this is not a full list of anyone who may be involved in the project, since nothing physically has happened yet. But right now I have myself, a member of the Parks Commission and a local business owner, and I'm currently spearheading this project, as you guys can see. We have Layla from REAP, so she's a youth essential coordinator. And REAP is a multicultural youth leadership program committed to empowering marginalized youth in grades 3 through 12. She can assist in coordinating youth involvement with the program, and she's very much interested in some long-term participation. This would be including things like park cleanups and others. So getting these at-risk youth, getting these youth that are really benefit from that sense of self-worth. She's a great contact person and can help coordinate their involvement. Jamie Adams from the WorkSource Youth Program. She has possible funding avenues and resources for volunteer hours and more. And so I don't have all the details on her options yet, but there's a great amount of funding there. Stacy is one of our juvenile probation officers local. She's a community connection and a volunteer support. Amanda Normine, she's the president of the Columbia County HUB, and this is a nonprofit with a focus on youth support and empowerment as well. She's pledged funding for supplies as well as volunteer support. And so she has access to ample funding to help purchase things like paint, supplies, and again, ongoing partnerships. So this would be something that wouldn't just end at the completion of the installation of the mural. Taylor Kanzler is a professional SFX, which is like special effects makeup and airbrush artist. She would be assisting and consulting regarding art and design, equipment and supplies, and then the application process. And Jeffrey Allen is a local resident, small business owner, and an artist. And he's here for community support and also assistance and consulting regarding the art and design, equipment and supplies, and application process. And I'd like to utilize those two artists for some educational opportunities throughout the project. Step 4 is putting a name. So to define the proposed project activities and timeframes, this is more rather than things that have happened or that have gotten in place. These are my guiding moving forward. So I need to allow adequate time to build the relationships with key partners and for broader community engagement, which I've been working on for the last 5 months. Planning for time contingencies and weather conditions. So installation of the actual mural would be best during warmer weather months with an expected dry period. And then ensuring time for final approval of the design and any readjustments as required. So again, it's kind of, what permissions are required at what stages in order to make that move forward. And then there's researching costs of similar projects. So consulting with the professional artists and investigating suppliers for costs. Taylor is going to be an excellent resource, and she does large scale airbrushing, including big outdoor putt golfs and big murals and things like that. So she has a great understanding of what supplies would be best for this kind of a project. And then of course, including costs for anti-graffiti coating after the mural is installed. And then researching similar projects, not only for this, but the free wall, the graffiti wall. I'm really interested in doing some more investigation. I just not as much luck there as I was hoping for. So identifying artists is step 5. And so one big goal of the project for me is to actively involve the community and youth in both the design and production of the art. So this is including professional artists and others with kind of the street credibility, which is why I'm using, semi or local artists, but they have quite a bit of social media presence, et cetera. In addition to the youth that are already engaged in the local graffiti and whatnot, because they're the ones who have the pull with the other youth, the local community, the ones that we're really trying to reach for this. So bringing them in can really support the reduction of future tagging. It's important to ensure that the artists are clear about the intent and purpose of the project and include anti-graffiti education activities as part of the project and ongoing community support. So professional artists and other volunteers, as well as service workers, will support the youth volunteers throughout the process and beyond. So, we talked about Layla, talked about Stacy, having them involved with these kiddos, working directly as an ongoing thing. Step 6 is engaging the community. This is really about engagement with the surrounding community there in the proximity to the park. And this can help demonstrate proactive management and reduction in graffiti and vandalism while managing any potential community concerns. So neighbors and local community members may be affected by the artwork and the project itself, and they should be engaged as part of the design process. Producing flyers, pamphlets, or other forms of communication, encouraging feedback, possibly having an email address that they can, send concerns or comments to, surveys, social media interactions, just ways of getting the local community to have a voice, have a say, and be involved in the project. So it's not just something happening there at the park, but something that they're actively engaged with. Step 7 is preparing the site. There's some notes in here about health and safety considerations. I'm not sure if any risk assessments would be required. I don't know. I'm going to ask on that today. What insurance or permits may be required, what safety equipment may be required, including PPE, like gloves, aprons, face masks, respirators, depending on what the paints are being used. Cleaning, prepping, and cordoning off the site. And then providing adequate signage and public notice when we are doing the installs, and secure storage and monitoring of all the equipment and paint that are not active. Step 8 is completing the work. That's the fun part. And documenting the process by utilizing video and/or photographs throughout the process. These can be shared publicly to inform and to gain support from the community. And then protect the completed artwork with that anti-graffiti coating to enable easier cleaning. So if there is any vandalism to the murals themselves, it can be easily washed off. And then I think it's really important to celebrate the completed work. And this supports the community pride and ownership of the space. I think participants, artists, partner organizations, local media, and the broader community should be invited to celebrate the completion. And it will help, just help with the greater goal. Step 9 is evaluating the project. So an evaluation strategy is vital. The goal is to measure the success of the project against the aim and key objectives. The post-completion data will need to be collected to compare to that baseline data that we talked about earlier, so that we can see what changes, if any, have occurred by the installation of the murals. Feedback is super, super important. So encouraging artists, participants, and local community to express views on the impact of the project. Note the project's strengths and challenges. And even if aspects of the project do not show success per se, lessons learned may still contribute to the broader evidence base. In addition to that, a quality evaluation may also be used to demonstrate success in other areas, such as strategies for health and well-being, as well as youth and community safety. Step 10 is maintaining the site and project benefits. So it's important to clarify the costs and responsibilities of any maintenance moving forward, both short and long term. And here I'd like to be very clear with park staff and whatnot, is through the discussions that I've been having with those who are interested in participating, the maintenance and costs would also be an ongoing thing that's covered outside, through these participating entities. So my goal is to not have any additional costs for the actual parks to accrue themselves. They don't have to do this. So this wouldn't necessarily be something that the staff would have to attend to, or that the parks would have to pay for, the city would have to pay for. All of these maintenance would be done through the volunteer hours that the youth involved and funded through these programs of agreeing to think it's a good idea. So it's a big goal of mine. Community and crime benefits risk being undermined if the site and surrounding areas are not properly maintained. So it's important to rapidly remove any future tagging. I thought it would be a great idea to have some kind of local graffiti hotline that would have a response in say less than 3 days to go out there and wash off any recurring graffiti. And consider continued use of the site as well as activities for young people to engage in following the project's completion. So again, not just putting the mural up and then saying, cool, I did my job, I'm walking away, but continued involvement with these youth and with the upcoming youth to prevent this long term. And then consider developing, this would be us as a parks, or I don't know if you guys already have something like this, but consider developing an overall graffiti strategy, which really outlines the approach to graffiti prevention and removal, including the role of public art and murals. The next steps is kind of where I'm at and where we'd like to go with this. So these are all my kinds of questions. What permissions would be needed to move this forward? What assistance is available beyond that which I've been seeking? What staff involvement may be available? What Parks Commission involvement may be available? And then to begin an action plan to begin to unfold the project itself. And then I'd like to know your guys' take on checking in, how often, at what points during the process, what information you guys would like to have. And then of course, any questions, suggestions, and other feedback from the commission and city staff.
Well, looks like your next step, since it's already been approved here, is to present that to the council.
Okay.
And have your answers ready for a lot of questions and how that's gonna happen. And I was gonna ask about the cost, because that's a problem with every one of the parks, you know?
Right.
So if are they donating, is it donating of time and
Yes.
resources? And-
So while I can't say 100% confirm until we get further on with the process, I do have promised funds for the supplies required to install the murals. So paint, paintbrushes, whatever else we would need, I can ask for funding. And then not only through the Columbia County HUB, but also through the WorkSource. There's grant opportunities, there's funds available right now that just need to be utilized. And so they can pay volunteer hours. So, and these are youth grants. And so we're talking utilizing the youth that are already there and need this, having them do the volunteer hours and work directly with other volunteers and artists, but also have their hours paid or have money paid based on their hours of volunteering. So my goal is to have no money put out from the city, like no request from the city to fund this project. It would be completely through volunteer and these other partners here in the community who've already offered.
Well, you're very dedicated, and I think it would work. It's a lot of questions so that the city will be having when you present that, so try and cover everything in your mind and be ready to answer that. So, any other questions?
This is really interesting. It sounds like a resurrection of the Arts and Cultural Commission again. That work has already been done. All that work that you have gone through and whatever, it's already on. And if you look at what the Arts and Cultural Commission was composed of, because of a lack of leadership, it dissolved. Same thing happened with bicycle and pedestrians. Because of a lack of leadership, it went away. And then we brought in Howie and Paul from the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee. So that's now. So maybe you're reading between the lines, but I see some really good possibilities of involving either with the Arts and Cultural Commission concept with the parks and maybe adding a person or two, but I can see that happening. Either that or seeing the Arts and Cultural Commission resurrect itself. Where did the money come from those bronze statues? If it wasn't with the city, those wouldn't be there, because the city helped out in ascertaining funds from the state it was huge. Those things are expensive. And so there would be tremendous benefits if you link it with the city somehow, some way, either in parks or resurrecting the Arts and Cultural Commission again. All he needs 3 people. And that's, my concern always with the council was, where are we going to go with all the artwork that's going to be down on the waterfront? Who's going to oversee that? Who on our council, or in what kind of group do we have to oversee those things? We don't have one now. The Arts and Cultural Commission kept inventories, kept maintenance records, kept everything. It was an effective organization.
Is it
And
possible,
the leadership changed and it went away.
how would we go about reconstituting it?
Pardon me?
How would we go about reconstituting that?
Just do it right here. Make a suggestion to the council. That would be.
That's something that I
That
was,
would be a suggestion out of this group saying, we'd like to look at that and whatever. I don't know. That's my take. And then you go through the same thing as this commission. You have a chairman and you have, all the things that you need as staff support. Yeah, matter of fact, you said you want to stay away from that, but I'm saying.
Does not have to put the responsibility on
Yeah.
them.
Exactly.
Yeah, because my goal, which is why I presented to this commission in particular, rather than doing it as like an individual project, is because we're solving a parks issue and utilizing the parks at the same time. And so I just don't want the city or the staff to feel like I'm recommending a burden onto them.
Like you do something, then you're like, bye, and
Yeah,
then.
yeah, exactly.
So it'd be the same thing as what Paul Barlow's doing now. He's the old bicycle and pedestrian committee, and and he works with the Parks Commission, and if he has agendas, he brings them up and says this and so that. So it could be laissez-faire like that. I don't know. If you the answer to the question, you do what you want.
I want to bring up something about volunteers. I ran across a email from you, Shanna, talking about all the different volunteers we have, the volunteer groups. And that now this year, the jail crew was coming back on board to help with parts. So we have a lot of volunteers. I've never had any problem getting volunteers, but we can all help out. I mean, that's what we need to do. That's what our purpose is.
So I just wanted to add to this, if there wasn't anything from the commission that you wanted specifically from Dana, I would love to meet offline
Okay.
and talk about just the different questions that you have. And also there is other funding grant opportunities for just like this program out there that we could look at, and with the city being the fiscal person for those grant things, we can look at that. And there's some quick hit ones out there that are specifically for art, specifically art in the park stuff. And that one group that we were kind of talking to about doing an art in the park,
Yeah.
maybe this could be something that ties in with that as well. So I think there's a lot of really great opportunities, and I'm more than welcome for anybody who wants to be involved with this project to do that. But and then we can do checkpoints at the meetings just to let you know what part we've progressed with, if you all are comfortable with that. And as far as the Arts and Cultural Commission, that would probably just be a conversation that we have with Kathy, just to see what next steps, if there's people who are interested in bringing that back to the, I think it definitely could happen.
Get the new audit or stage put in at Columbia View Park. That's for 13 nights. I mean, we'd like to utilize that for other things too.
Yeah,
So that's what the
yeah.
Arts and Cultural Commission would be really good.
Yeah, and I think just they were doing more like events-based things where it was more, yeah, so I think that's why it kind of went away, but we can definitely talk about what that looks like, and Brandon, I'm sure you'll have some input, especially with being some stuff for that, but it was a great commission. We have some great pieces of art out here because of it.
Yeah, I'm gonna run it like an iron fist with it, thinking that, I oversaw the Parks Commission before liaison came along. Things like just ideas that would come into my head that I thought were really good, was bringing the Arts and Cultural Commission and the Parks Commission together and paint garbage cans. And then so the volunteers took it and they had big prize money and whatever, and it became a huge event. And about the time that the liaison thing came aboard, I was trying to promote the Arts and Cultural Commission painting picnic tables and doing a series of things there's so much, and there's so much money involved with the State Arts Commission, even federal dollars, but mostly state and different, it's out there, so.
Well, it'd be
anyway,
nice, because once you
good
start
idea.
moving forward with this, you'll get people who are interested, and those are the people that you come do more, come be on the arts, yeah, so I think this will really cultivate a connection that is more so than just an art piece, which is amazing, and I really believe in this type of stuff too, but cultivate also other opportunities for everyone as well.
And I'd really, really like to focus on getting the youth involved.
Yes.
And, having them work side by side with the parks and having them work side by side with, the probation and the police or whoever else. And also have individuals like myself and the artists that I'm bringing on, which, give them a kind of a just a little bit different feel of connection with the adults that are involved. We can be a little less intimidating than say coming to city council and talking, especially for these at-risk youth. It's a lot harder to put themselves out there and in front of people who could otherwise seem, not saying that they're being judged, but there's that perception. And so trying to give them a safe place to be involved, because then, if that puts them on a more positive trajectory moving forward, then hopefully they'll be taking over the Arts Commission in 10 years, right?
I'm just thinking too, I know the city council has talked about bringing the youth council back. If that does happen, I think that would be a great thing for them to be involved with too.
And you ask about checking in and how often, and I think maybe once a quarter.
Okay.
Because you're gonna need some time. Not only to get started, but, then winter comes and it's not a lot that can be done, so,
Right.
once a quarter. But you should also ask for volunteers from the Parks Commission to help with that, so.
Well, if anybody wants to get involved and help with this project, hopefully I'll be meeting with Jana to do a little bit more hands-on work, since this is mostly just kind of getting the feelers out, doing the research and building some of those connections and seeing really what the options were. I feel that it's a place that we can really start to move forward on. And so I'd like to meet with her and then probably plan a time to bring it to the city council.
Right.
So you're doing your homework.
Yeah, it was impressive.
Good. I like.
Not
this.
surprised. I like that you brought up the idea that it's not a one and done, type of thing. And I think that free wall could actually be something that could be used to engage and re-engage.
Yeah.
Every annually or semi-annually, have somebody come in who kids come in and paint it up.
Yeah, I actually had an interesting conversation with a artist friend of mine who's a tagger, hopefully retired tagger, and he was discussing the free walls that they've been participant with in the past. And one thing that he thought was fun is after years of, or periods of time of painting and repainting by the artists who were using it, they were able to go through and chip off these big chunks, just layered and layered paint. But it was almost this artistic souvenir, for these artists, and they took great pride in these things. And he mentioned how the free walls, the kind of tagging walls, is almost this rotation of artists where they would come through and then they'd have to work harder and harder and harder to do better quality art. And so you weren't just seeing these kids coming and writing their names all over it. You were seeing more and more advanced pieces of artwork. And so if we can get those kids engaged in that, practicing that, playing that, and then having them install the murals, you know, we can go through and almost paint by number it for them, but have them be the ones who are installing it, them being the ones who are cleaning and maintaining it. Because then they'll have the pride in it and not want to destroy it, not want to tag other places. If they have the opportunity to put a big, beautiful piece of artwork that everyone's gonna see, they're gonna know they're the ones who did it, and they're not gonna be getting in trouble by doing it. It's just more incentive to do it the right way.
You're right. Hopefully to install pride. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much. It was excellent. Next on the list is for new business is Parks Internet presence.
Yeah, I was
Commissioner Jacobson.
wondering what you guys thought about, what, looking for the parks, the city parks on the internet. I mean, what do you guys think when you do that? If you've done that,
Yeah,
what do you think of that?
I brought
How does
that,
how does that strike you, I guess?
I brought that up about 2.5 years ago and probably another year ago, and it just doesn't seem to change. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at it and I mean, with what we have right now, it's fine. I mean, a lot of other cities do exactly the same thing of what, is the development of the site as it is right now. But it doesn't have any really bang factor.
So I haven't looked at the website for a while having to do with parks, but when I did, I remember it was pretty basic. There's
Yeah, it's very basic.
maybe a picture and then it lists, this is what's available at that
That
park.
hasn't
But
changed, so,
No.
definitely, I think room for improvement. We can add more photos and more,
yeah,
like you say, spice it up a little bit, make people want to go to those places.
yeah, that's what I'm looking at. That's what I thought it
So
just.
that is on one of our action plans. So Crystal's actually been going out and taking photos. And so there will be an update. So that is in the works with everything that Crystal's been working on. So just an FYI, there will be some new photos and what areas you can reserve, pictures of the areas that you can reserve. You can Google map it, find out what's going on, and hopefully it'll link to the events also that's going on there.
And
So
that's just, to have on each individual park, have a little bit of a historic background on it. Just make it all, more inviting than just the austere type of setting it is right now.
I noticed that the Dalton Preserve still doesn't have a picture.
I looked at that.
Glad you brought that up. I was going, for my report, I was going to invite Les Waters in and have him explain how easy and how wonderful it was to make a trail map. And he did that, has that mappage out. It's so easy, it's just like anyone could do it. And so I was going to bring that up because there's an urban trail right there. That to me is like phase one of the urban trail. They put it on your phone and away you go. And so that could be phase one. That could be phase one of a lot of things you folks do, is get it. That's really a good suggestion, and I hope the council's open to that. And there really isn't a lot of money involved. Google Maps is like, it's free to everyone. And I think it'd be a tremendous asset, and especially for Howie's Knobbill Nature Park and Dalton Lake, and again, the urban trail that hasn't been because of monetary issues, because of staff, because of all kinds of things. It's kind of like taking stuck.
Well, we gotta start somewhere.
Yeah, it's like in a snow, so anyway, that was going to be my report, but Les has COVID and he can't get out of his house, so it's fortunate. Have him in sometime. I mean, he's a tremendous resource, unbelievable. So I think there's merit to that. He's open on museum's open on Thursdays, and if you ever get a hold of him there.
They're actually closed now through the end of it, through until January, just all there's quite a few of our volunteers there that are sick now, so they decided to stay closed up through December, but
Brandon, I hope you push that. I hope you push that with the,
I like that idea. Like you said, it's free to create a Google map and doesn't require painting on the roads and putting in signs, and it'd be a great first step.
without a doubt, then it's all there for the, for any of the construction crews to see what's there. There's breakdowns of communication of what Jerry Belcher has on his paper and getting to certain people, and the papers get lost, and this happens and that happens. But if it's electronic and if it's on a phone and it's going in stages, it just seems like, man, that's the way to go. Anyway.
Put up a sign with a QR code and
Exactly.
on their way they can go.
We did do that at Nob Hill. We had that Portland Community College student, there's a class in map making and stuff, and they made us a beautiful map for the park. So we do.
Wonderful.
I don't know, I thought you saw that, Doug. We got it off, showed it if you haven't seen it. It's got a QR code. The city gave it a QR code and everything, and it's on our kiosk and that type of thing.
So the QR code is on your kiosk.
Yes, on the map on the kiosk.
See, I haven't used it now.
Oh, okay.
So if anybody has any suggestions or anything that you want to email over to me, I can make sure that when Crystal's doing the updating, that we get those in as long as they're in compliance with what we need to do. I don't see any problem with that, so.
The first one. Anything else? Okay, next item is bylaw changes, and that's coming from me. I noticed, I was kind of amazed that we weren't meeting in November, because we could have got a lot of this work done. We could have been interviewing people already and forwarding that on to the city council by now. So I started looking at our bylaws and our Parks and Recreation municipal code, and they don't match. So I'm going to make a suggestion for 2 different changes, and then we'll make a motion to accept or decline that. So in the bylaws, it says, let's see here. First item that I have is in Article 3. And it says Parks and Trails Commission shall consist of 9 at-large members, at least 8 of which shall be city residents. In the municipal code, it says 6. So in other words, we can have 3 people that don't live in the city of St. Helens. So I'm moving that we move it to 6 instead of 8, so it matches our municipal code. And then the second item is I'd like November, well, in Article 7, on the second sentence, it says the regular meeting of the Parks and Trails Commission shall be the second Monday of every month except November. So instead of putting except November, leaving that in, I'd like to take that out because that's not in our municipal code as well. The reason they did that was they were thinking that the Veterans Day was always, the city was closed on that second Monday, but that's not the case such as this year. So I looked forward, and in about 3 years, it happens again. So that means we have at least another month to get some work done on the commission. So my recommendation is to strike out except November. And Kathy told me, she says November date can be changed by her. So in other words, if they find out in 2 years that, you know, we're gonna have a conflict on the second Monday of November, and the city will be closed, then she'll change that. And actually, Melissa was just telling me that they're gonna do the whole year pretty soon and schedule that, so.
Yeah, Kathy wants the dates. She wants to be able to know ahead of time what all the dates.
So it'll be the second Monday, you know, unless it's Veterans Day observed. So do we have a motion to accept that?
So these would be 2 separate two separate motions.
Well, this is just on the bylaws and the two changes that
Okay,
are
so
on.
what's the first change again? It's from 6 to
The
8.
first
what?
change is Article 3, under composition, change from 8 to 6,
Can you-
shall be city residents.
Can you restate that again? I mean,
Okay,
the meaning behind that,
on Article 3 or,
on the at-large people.
okay. It says, this Article 3 composition, the Parks and Trails Commission shall consist of 9 at-large members, at least, and it says 8, of which shall be city residents and 1 ex officio non-voting council member. So I want to change that from 8 to 6, so it matches our Parks and Recreation Municipal Code. Says no less than 6 of the at-large members shall be residents of the city of St. Helens.
Yeah, I hate seeing too many non-resident people getting in the Parks Commission.
That's in the municipal code, that's our law. So I'm trying to update our bylaws to reflect what's in that.
That part doesn't bother me so much because you think there's so many people that live, maybe they live just outside of city limits that are still, this is considered their city. They still utilize our parks. And you look at Lynn, who lives outside of city limits, you look at all the work that she does for the city. That part doesn't bother me so much, but so on the municipal code portion, does it still require 9? Is that 9 total? Is that
Oh,
right?
yeah, 9 total,
We could have.
but we can have 3.
But 3 could be outside of city limits.
Which would be great for me, because we're actually looking to buy and we're probably right outside of town. And I've actually been dragging my feet so that I don't have to leave the Parks Commission. And so I support that fully. Because I agree that a lot of people who either residents of, or I was going to ask actually, as one of my questions was to clarify whether or not like business owners in town counted as a, but technically it wouldn't be a resident if we moved outside, but it would be.
It specifically mentions residents.
Brandon brings up a good point, because I've always thought as well is that the language might read urban expansion zone rather than city limits, because it affects future involvement in terms of looking at park areas and whatever. And it does affect people just outside our city limit immensely. So that's a good point, and that language could change in terms of the boundary.
So you're changing it to where now only 6 of the 9 commission members need to be city residents.
Right.
Just making sure I'm putting that in correct.
And I can give you, I can go over that with you again. Okay, so is there a motion? Or do we need a motion? Okay, that's what I got.
I'm not sure how to,
Would you like to
Phrase
propose
it.
a motion?
State what you want.
Yeah,
Somebody
okay.
just,
So
okay.
a motion to change the bylaws to match our municipal code for Parks and Recreation Commission as stated in article or presented for Article 3 and Article 7.
Now, Article 7 is the one regarding November.
Striking out except November.
Okay, so I actually really appreciated the pause. I do think too, with the events and whatnot that take place during the September and October months, that having a short pause was really helpful for me to regroup, to reassess, and to work on the projects versus having another meeting right after that. I also question later dates having to, okay, maybe this year we're gonna have to change it to a different day because the holiday does lie on that. I feel like it would put a little bit of extra work on the later years. And so I don't necessarily think that that would have to include the November.
We can make it another date.
My question is, how is that handled by
Kathy would do that.
other city commissions? Do you know, or do they take November off, or like the library commission does
I'm
everybody
at
else
on the
meet in
library
November?
board on the day, that day.
Okay.
So Parks didn't meet.
So
The
Parks,
library
right
board.
now Parks is the only one that does that. Is
I don't
that-
know if it's the only one.
I believe so, and then And we can check with Kathy too, so don't quote me if I'm wrong on this, but if we decided to take a pause in November, it doesn't mean we still can't.
Okay,
It just, that was in there, that just regardless, in November, we're not having a meeting, so depending on what.
Would we,
that looks
Right there, the
like.
chair can say, we're not gonna have a meeting next month.
okay.
Ta-da.
But that would, I talked to Kathy for quite a while in November about this, and she said she can change the date for us. So, you know, I don't think I think it's a good idea to not say, to not ever meet in November. I mean, I wouldn't be bothered by that. I'm here to do work, you know?
At least it
And,
leaves it on there that it is an option if we.
yes,
You
right.
can always, like you say, if there's not much business that month, we can say, take a month off, we'll see you in December, but.
And as I wrote here, what she says she can change the date for us.
The only reason I think I'm hesitant is specifically on that of like changing the date 1 month or 1 year versus all the other times that are quite consistent. And so like personally with my schedule being as busy and booked out as it is, I'm planning, 6 months in advance or greater at all times. So knowing when my meetings are and having that consistency is really vital for me attending to my tasks.
I think
And
too,
so
Melissa, you said they're gonna try to have the year planned out in advance, is that correct?
So that's something that wouldn't necessarily change unless it is like, okay, well, we're just not gonna hold the meeting this time.
I think they would probably take that in account when they were planning for the year, they would.
If they knew
Yeah.
ahead of time that,
Okay.
It's falling on Veterans Day or something.
Okay, so we would have that like greater than 6 months in advance, knowing that we wouldn't be having that meeting. Oh, well, okay.
Okay. So I made a statement.
And it's together because I'm in favor of one, but not the other.
Oh, which one are you not in favor of?
I still like city residents. That
But that was already adopted in the municipal code. That's our,
we need to change the municipal code, we changed
Still have
one or the other.
five, right?
huh?
There still would be
No, you'd have six.
six,
Yeah.
so there
We
we
have
still have
three
six
non-residents.
residents.
Yeah, and that's where I have an objection, maybe one or two, but you're giving away 1/3 of it out of town.
It's possible, it's up to 3 that could be non-residents. And again, we would have that individual choice when we approve them onto the commission.
Yeah, or on an interview for a vacant position.
I'm just thinking the applicants that we've been getting lately, some of them are completely out of city limits. We're not getting people in city limits applying even. So it's not like there's this mad rush of St. Helens citizens that are trying to get on the Parks Commission that we're gonna be turning away. But I think ultimately, like Dana said, when we're doing selecting, we can always pick who we think is the most valuable candidate.
You don't have to do that, but if you wanted to.
It's an option.
Yeah, exactly.
Then I would second to make changes to our bylaws to reflect the city municipal code as stated.
Okay. And who made the original motion?
Did
I
you
thought
know?
you did.
I stated it for somebody else, but yeah.
So I will make, I don't know if I'm gonna say it right, but I guess I need to start practicing, so. I will make a motion to approve, to amend the bylaws with the
Stated changes
stated changes.
to reflect.
To reflect what's in the municipal code.
All right, and I second that.
All right. Okay, let's have a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, so next item is we need an interview panel subcommittee. And so I can go ahead and appoint the subcommittee. And after that is done, then Melissa will be setting up appointments this week, Kathy wanted it this week, the 13th through the 16th, to interview the 3 candidates. So I know several of you are working, you know, it might be better in the evening, which is fine.
So you're saying interviews this week?
Yeah, interviews this week and so I'm gonna appoint 3 people. And I'd like to appoint Brandon as one and Dana as the other.
That's why it's the reason for the whole group used to have.
It's gonna be on Zoom. It's gonna be on Zoom. And I went all over this with Kathy and she says it could be on Zoom. And then when we have a final meeting to decide who is gonna be reappointed and appointed to the commission, then that has to be done within the next week. So that she can take it to city council.
Will that spill over into January?
Yes, it will.
Whoa.
You know why? Is because Jacob has already served 2 terms. And so he actually, at the discretion of the interview panel, can be reappointed. But if that interview panel decides not to, he has to re-interview or submit an application. And it has to, remember, this all has to go to the city council. We have to recommend. Now, this is what Kathy said, so. Yeah.
Well, I'm concerned about Brandon. That he's on the city council and he's also on this.
Brandon's position is gonna be vacant, okay, and so is Carmen's.
I get it. I see
Yeah.
what you're saying. So
Yeah.
whoever fills
So
Brandon,
no, we've gotta appoint somebody after the interviews for Carmen and Brandon's position. We don't have to fill both of them. If we feel the candidates, you know, maybe we only like one of the candidates for that position. If we wanna fill Brandon's position, we can have her advertise again.
is he going to be making suggestions in the Parks Commission?
Only in December, this week.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that's, I just wanted to protect that
Right,
issue, is that,
No, but what's gonna happen is if we decide to reappoint, it's all a timing thing. So if we decide to reappoint Jacob, then it has to come to the commission and be approved and then recommended to the city council. So all that is 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks.
I get it.
Yeah, so it'll be January before that's done.
So how many people do we have that are,
We have 3 people that put in
for how
applications
many positions then?
for 1 or maybe 2.
Because then we have an open position for.
We have 2 open positions, okay?
So then the select committee gets to decide who those
Yes.
candidates are and we don't get to vote on it as a group.
You'll be notified of what our recommendation is. And then I'll come to the commission meeting, which is January 9th. So,
Is it potentially where Brandon is making the selection for Parks and Rec and then also as a city council person?
that can happen.
he won't be on city council till January,
Right, but
but he will not be here for the January meeting. He's
So
on
he'll
city council.
be making a recommendation this week for
That's
the
right.
Parks Commission, then to officially approve and
Yes.
nominate that we send to city council in January.
In January.
And that's when Brandon will be on
And
city
for Jacob
council.
as well.
But that's when Brandon will be on city council, so then technically then he would be approving it.
So I will go ahead and bring it to the commission.
Yeah, just don't let it happen. I mean, if there's a snow days and things get all screwed up and it spills over into January, I know that can be a huge issue.
Yeah, well, it'll have to be, you know, that way. That's why it was so,
Would you pick a different,
I was just gonna say, not knowing when the dates and things are gonna line up, maybe just to be safe, maybe it should be somebody else.
there's
Oh, no.
Paul, Howard and.
Because
Scott.
she didn't seem to have any
I was told I'll
problem.
be sworn in January 4th.
Right.
You can have an alternate, you know, to fill in if it does get spilled over. I mean, that can happen as well.
But I'm
all
happy if
that
somebody else
position-
is interested, I'd be glad to.
Well, I ask you because you're the vice chair. I was gonna ask, maybe Jerry too, because he's past chair, but I think, I thought about it and this is who I want on the interview committee. But that shouldn't interfere with Brandon being sworn in on the 4th. All that decision has already been made. It's not about him giving it to the commission on the 9th. And that way, the commission can make their comments.
That's why we were.
But also, that's when, if it was decided that Jacob would have to reapply for the commission.
I think it's okay either.
It's confusing. In fact, I talked to Lisa today and she says, wow, this is really different.
Yeah, I think, I think stay away from Brandon. I really do, because again, he'll be recommending someone that he's gonna vote on. It's just like, oh, that does not look good, and somebody's gonna question it. I know they will. That'd be a hard way to start out,
I want to start.
I swear.
I agree.
I'm fine if there's somebody that's interested and somebody that you would be comfortable appointing, then I'm happy to step
Okay.
aside.
So there's 2 people that aren't here today and will not be for a good couple of weeks, but one of them. Paul, are you there? Okay,
And we're wanting to do the interviews this week.
we have to, she said, between the 13th and 16th, get it done. And then we have a Zoom meeting, the committee, on the 19th, which is Monday, and make a final decision. And then we notify Kathy. Something different from,
So there would be a meeting, so we would interview the possible candidates this week, the 13th through the 15th, and then there would be an additional meeting
the
on
19th.
Monday, the 19th.
Unless you want to stay after the interviews and discuss that, we could do that as well.
Well, the reason I ask is personally my schedule, I'm booked super solid all of this week. And
In the
so
evening,
I'm completely unavailable until at least 7 PM, if not later, every day. And I have, and it's full, and I have no way to reschedule these guys.
I remember I had my interview for the library board at 7. Because the people that were interviewing were. So that wouldn't be a problem, I don't think.
It just might be a problem for us with staffing, but we'll have to look because we've got 2 really busy weeks coming up with winter break and programming. So I'll just have to check in with Kathy if we can do.
It's a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, but even just hour wise, because we're maxed out on our staffing hours, not knowing these meetings were happening. So yes, I'll check with Kathy to see if we have overtime approved or.
Yeah, I'll call Kathy on that because she didn't mention that would be a problem. If we were just clicking on a Zoom link.
Yeah, but I still have to pay my staff for
Right,
the
like I
time.
was saying
She's a-
before, I think I have to be available to monitor it. Like if I'm the one creating the Zoom meeting, I think I have to be available to run it.
Yeah, so if you can send me, because I haven't gotten any of this information, but if you can send me the dates and times, then I can make sure I'm looking at Melissa's schedule to see if she can run them for you guys.
Okay, she is gonna probably figure that out between the interviewees and the interviewer. So
Okay,
that's what Kathy said, but if it's gotta be different.
yeah, we'll talk to
Yeah.
Kathy and see, because this is the first I've heard of it, but yeah.
She wasn't here today,
Okay,
so I asked Lisa.
If that was a reason to have a November meeting.
It would have been nice.
Yes.
Yeah. So this would have all been taken care of, but
And these all have to be done this week simply because we have to
That's
fill
what she-
the
it's timing
Okay.
going to the city council.
Okay.
And with Jacob, that kind of throws in a different kind of mix. So, is Paul Barlow back yet?
so it says Paul Barlow is back, but I can't Can you unmute Paul on there? I'm trying to ask you to unmute. It's not allowing it. So I don't know what's going on there.
Okay. So, wow. Okay.
So with that, so that's a to be announced. We'll check in with Kathy tomorrow too, just to see. Melissa, can you help me with that? Yep. Okay.
Yeah, and in these kind of matters, like moving forward, if we know there's gonna be additional meetings and that kind of stuff, for me, it just works out well to have as much advance notice as possible.
I was worried about that as well.
Yeah, and I can always be reached via email and whatnot too, if these are things that we're discussing. I don't know if that goes outside of the rules of talking with the commission members or whatnot, but just having notice ahead of time so I could try to finagle my schedule to fit these things in would be really helpful going forward.
Yeah. So Commissioner Jacobson, would you like to be on the interview panel? Probably in the evening.
I could do it.
Okay. And so I'd like to ask Paul, but we can, so I'll call him tonight.
Yeah, I don't know why it's not.
Yeah. So, all right.
And just so I can be clear as well, one more time, so this will be interviewing and making a recommendation that then comes back to the Parks Commission first for all of us to agree on before going to city council with the recommendation of who to bring on for the commission?
No, she says it has to go to the Parks Commission after we interview and make that decision, because once we made a decision on from the 3 interviewees, then we can tell her what those persons are or person, and then she can take it to city council to approve. But there would only be one more person that's why it goes into January, and that would be maybe Jacob.
Because then we have to vote on it as a group, if that's who we
Yeah.
want to.
And you gotta know that the interview panel are the ones that have made the decision, and it's probably a very good decision. And we've covered all the questions that we've asked before. And so it's I think would be more of a formality and any questions that you might have.
All the other years that I've served on this board, we've gotten to interview them as a group, and they kind of just.
Just a piece of paper.
Really very different now that you're gonna ask us to rubber stamp what 3 people decide out of 9.
Well, yeah, this is all coming from Kathy.
Yeah, so I'll just clarify with Kathy tomorrow just to make sure so that I can.
Shocked.
I will clarify with her too. Yeah, because last time we had to hurry up and within a month come up with questions that we wanted to ask. And then we had to rank and all that. And she said, you don't have to do that. And so she told me the process.
Yeah,
Is this putting us in line with how other commissions do their interviews? Do you know? Is it similar?
It's similar.
So how library board does it is we have a interview like subcommittee, and it's usually 2 people. And we would literally just meet them for coffee at Starbucks. And we did have questions that were approved ahead of time, and we would just ask them the questions. And then once we were done meeting all of our people, which again was just I was on it for a couple of years, it was just me and the other person, and we would just between us say, hey, do you want to meet him at Starbucks on Saturday? Yep, cool, okay, cool. And then we would, once we decided out of those applicants who we liked, at the next meeting, we would bring it to the rest of the board, hey, we liked A and B out of ABC, and this is why. And then the rest of the board would say, okay, we trust your recommendation. We are going to vote on A and B joining the board. And then we would then push that motion and that vote to the city council. And then if that recommendation to the council was accepted, then they were formally invited. And that's how it went.
I think the planning commission also does subcommittee too.
Just enjoy getting to see the demeanor of the people and the way they answer the questions.
Is
Nice
it
to
not,
get all the boards and commissions doing the same thing.
Right.
it's on Zoom, is it not? The whole interview process is on Zoom?
Yes.
Could you then not have the opportunity
To at least watch,
to watch?
the other members watch on the Zoom.
She didn't say anything about that, just having it.
Recorded? Can you,
Well, it's
watch
gonna
it
be
later
Zoom. But you know, the whole idea is you've got an interview panel, just like she was explaining, and they make that decision, you've got to trust them to make a good decision on it. So that's how I'm looking at it.
Just an old ways person. Just enjoy the way we've done it in the past is all.
So any other
So Lynn, you'll just email everyone that you want on the subcommittee with the times and stuff, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that will be our next step.
So,
Let's do it.
so she suggested that Melissa was going
Because this
to
doesn't-
get everybody on
Doing this
what
without-
time worked for the interviewees,
That sounds good.
and, you know,
Consider
that can-
consider the.
if that can be possible, then, you know, and I can do it.
So I don't
Yeah,
think
that's
it's
Well, they
viable.
count. So just the way that they never voted on it a few years ago.
Yeah, because didn't we just change different, like the last time we interviewed, it was different as well. And so these changes in the interview process, I'm just kind of hearing you guys and reflecting on it, and I kind of agree that because I feel like I don't understand why there has been a sudden change that is being directed this way, and that why we're being told we have to do this without any input.
I don't know if you remember, but Doug Morton was the one that suggested we do that way, do the ranking and have questions that are the same every time, and do the, you know, turn that all into Kathy, and so when I talked to her about that, she said, you don't have to do that.
Well, I hated that part. That's,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
personally didn't like that, because
Right.
no,
we had, what was it, 4 questions or something, and it said, what was your favorite park? That was the question.
Right.
You have to rank their answer from 1 to 10. It's like, how do I rank that? There's no right or wrong answer. So some of that just didn't make sense to me.
I agree with that.
And you meet on the second Monday, you know, at 4:00.
Yeah, how do you-
Like, okay, how do you, yeah.
No, okay, you get a 0, yes, you get a 10. It's like, some of those just didn't make sense to rank, but the before too, it worked, but it seemed kind of primitive. We all wrote on a piece of paper and passed it around. Well, then when things were on Zoom, they couldn't have a piece of paper, so they were trying to text their vote, and it was kind of a mess too.
I was glad that she talked to me about that.
Well, to Howard's point is that we're changing the process without any discussion or consent by.
it's happening.
I'm not sure if that's the way to go forward.
Well, like I said, when I met with Kathy, she was telling me how we can do that. And we sat for quite a while. So it's a new process, just like the last time was a new process.
Uh-huh.
So.
Same
thing.
It's just
and,
happening.
Well, yeah, and the same thing happened then. We had a month actually I had to figure out what all the questions were from everybody, and then we had to figure out how we were gonna score, and it was just, I was not too keen on it either. So I know it's hard to do changes, but
Changes can be absolutely wonderful when they benefit everybody involved.
Uh-huh.
My concern is, and it's probably just one of my little quirks, I really like consistency. I really like clear understanding of what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. Rationale is a big thing for me. And so I don't necessarily enjoy this conversation knowing I don't mean that in any negative manner. What I'm saying is, for me, it's a little confusing and to be honest, uncomfortable to consider without any prior conversation. So prior to this moment, I didn't know that you and Kathy had any conversations about any of the changing on how we bring in new members, right? So this is all new information for me as of this meeting. So I've had no time to reflect or assess or give input, right? We didn't have the opportunity for any discussion in this. And then while I would love to be participant in bringing on new members, the timing is very tight, it's very strict, you know, and the not having the November meeting, I understand it compounds that. So again, it's nothing negative against anyone or anything in particular. It's just a situation that is hard for me. But moving forward, I think it would be really healthy to, you know, Brandon commented about, or one of you guys commented about the other commissions, the other parts of our government here in St. Helens. How do they do their onboarding for their new members? And we were able to get input from the library board, and that's fantastic. But this feels even a little bit different than that. And I also think that a healthy conversation, rather than, I would love to blindly trust everyone that I work with, you know, but not being able to review a candidate in any manner and still giving a vote on that candidate is a little hard for me. So, so I think moving forward, having the ability to have a little bit more review, or at least a group conversation about these kinds of processes would be really important. Because I feel this is a change that affects everybody, and yet we've had no discussion about it prior to
Because
today.
these people could be on there for years.
So what would you
and there's no
suggest?
discussion.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't understand the full scope of the issue, right? So like, I didn't know there was a time constraint on getting new people on. I didn't know there was a discussion of changing the process. I didn't know any of that. And so as you can see, I like to have all my information before I make any decision. So I can tell you that I'm grossly unprepared to answer that and provide any suggestions, because I don't know what I'm working with, to be honest with
Because
you.
I thought the last discussion we had was that we were gonna do this all in January or
Right.
something.
Yeah,
Well, we're supposed to be choosing new people voting too for a new chair and
Yeah.
vice chair in December, but somebody had made it January, and then the new person, like, I didn't even start till March. And so I got 9 months, you know, in for the chair. Next person maybe will get 12 because maybe they'll work in November, you know, I don't know. But at least, you know, 11 months. And so I think why she was probably suggesting that is because I know that she mentioned we didn't have a meeting on November, and it's kind of pushing things faster. So, but basically it's like the library board and what they do as far as interviewing and having one or two people interview. And here I was trying to get 3 people at least. So, yeah. So it might feel like fast now, but it won't be in the future, because this is what we're gonna be doing
right.
from now on. We're not gonna be ranking and
So we
doing.
don't even get to vote on the fact if we want to have a selection committee or we just get a recommendation of which one of the 3 the 3 people decide that we should vote for.
And you can
that's,
ask
know,
questions. You can ask questions too.
But not to the person who's
No.
in that office. We can just ask questions to each other, and that's where I've always enjoyed our other way. So basically, we're changing the way that we're doing it with no input from the board. It's just happening. We're gonna, because other commissions do it, we're gonna do it their way. With no voting.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at it, I was
To be voted on.
wondering with, you know, interview panel subcommittee, I was wondering if had there already been one appointed prior to my coming on the board. And I was wondering, because I wasn't sure what this all was all about. So I mean, it's a little bit out of left field.
Way out of left field.
So what could you suggest? Do we just not fill these positions for the next 3 months, or?
What happened at our next meeting if we didn't interview the people how we have in the past, and it would just delay everything 1 month.
Well, you know what, I'm going to we'll put this on pause for today. And we'll talk to Kathy about your concerns and see what happens.
Thank you.
I think that would be really appropriate.
Okay. So the next thing is to appoint and vote commission members, reappoint them to their positions. And one is Paul and the other is myself. And both Paul and myself would like to be reappointed to the commission.
Or do we need to make a motion on that
You
then?
need to make a motion on that.
I'm gonna make a motion to reappoint Lynn and Paul Barlow on the Parks and Trails or Parks and Rec Commission.
I second it.
Any other discussion? All those approve? The motion is approved. For reappointments. Of Paul and Lynn.
That's a quick 10 minutes.
Okay, old business, urban trail.
Any super exciting updates, except Tori and I went to a conference back in November and we sat in on an Oregon Parks and Recreation grants class and got some really good information for different grant cycles that will be opening that this very well could fit in with that scope of work. Jenny Dimshow and myself are going to go over what that looks like. Everyone's been a little busy with the Riverwalk stuff, so we haven't made a lot of movement on anything more on the urban trail besides there could be some funding opportunities that we're going over. So as soon as I have some more information on that, I will definitely let you know. I know in parts of the Riverwalk, there is parts of the urban trail pieces in there and places where they might be relocating things based on where the utilities are going and that sort of thing. So we're still on pause, but it's something that we do actively talk about in our manager meetings and stuff and how we could have capacity to start pushing forward to the next step with what we have on our plates right now.
So we're still what, probably 2 or 3 years out on the urban trails.
I don't know an exact answer to that. I do know it's actively being looked at on what we can do for funding wise.
Did Dave Elder or one of the engineers have any suggestions on what we could start with?
So they did take a look at the things and they do have some suggestions. They haven't been able to do any price points on anything yet. And I'll re-follow up with them. I know Sharon and I have been working on special use permit and road closure things right now. So there's some other things that are more in our face right now that we need to take care of before those next steps.
I know that Mohammed sent out a very detailed email and I thought it was very good.
Yeah.
And I approved, that was in June.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm trying to keep this on the.
Yeah. No, and I think it's definitely something to keep talking about. And it's been something we've talked about in our management meetings and stuff and what capacity everybody has right now. But right now, the main focus is the Riverwalk stuff.
And that's if the urban trail goes through that. So the construction out here is another year or two. So that's why I say I will see this happening very quickly.
Yeah, we want to make sure that when we do it right. We do things that are sustainable, just kind of like with Dana's plan with the 10 points, making sure that whatever is being put in isn't something that we're going to have to replace in a year or that it's not going to be in the right away, that sort of thing. So making it a thoughtful manner, I think, is the important part of it.
I think it's a lot more complicated than anyone ever thought. And it gets complicated when you start infiltrating into neighborhoods. And then it gets complicated when there are safety issues of cars going over cliffs and little children going over cliffs. There is insurance issues. There's all kinds of issues once we leave this flat ground down here and start going up into the area down around Great Cliffs. Then that's where the big holdup is. It's just like a big gut punch.
Just don't
Many things.
understand where that would be a problem because, I mean, it's a public right of way right now without, having any type of fencing or anything like that along that. If I'm reading you correctly, the problem is with the overlook area.
Oh, that area up there, yes.
I mean, it's a right of way right now and there's no barrier or.
Well, that's correct.
So I mean, it's
But
still the same
deemed
thing.
Unsafe.
what's that?
It's deemed unsafe.
It's still as it is now,
Yes,
even out the urban trail.
right.
Okay.
So if we did nothing, it'd stay that way, you know, but it's the same thing, it's the same way with sidewalks. If you do something, if you're going to fix up a home or a residence or whatever, and you're going to do certain kinds of things, especially build a place, then you have to go by the codes. And so if we're going to do something up there, then it's got to be by the codes. You can't ask city staff to do something that they're going to answer for codes back in the 20s or the 30s. It's what needs to happen now. If it's going to be engineered and done, it's got to be done right. I think that's the issue. And I was surprised at that because I kind of thought, well, just putting in a barrier would be fine. Can we do? It's into a point where our staff is liable for the work that they do.
Is there a way to cut it out so we don't go through Graceless?
Yeah, that's the second.
Yeah, so I don't know if I answered that question, but that's my understanding. So as far as I'm concerned, I'd love to see the urban trail go in. Not any improvements, just.
It's been 4 years?
What's that?
It's been 4 years now that we've been working on it?
Well, we haven't been really stumbling around that's about it, yeah. Exactly.
When the committee walked the trail, up there where the barriers should be,
Yes.
we talked about how black you can almost see through. We have some on our deck.
Right.
And we were talking about putting posts there as well as the chain link through there,
Right.
that would be black.
Right.
So you really it wouldn't impair the view of the people that live there, but yet it would be something that would be some kind of safety barrier.
Yeah. Exactly.
So
But
I'm
what I
hoping to
understand-
start on something.
What I understand you saying is that might not be doing it right if you do that type of barrier.
Well, that will be up to engineering and planning and all of them to decide what that looks like. So, and they are hiring another engineer. I don't know if you saw that. So the city of St. Helens does have an opening for an engineer because there's a lot of work going on up there. I mean, so.
At one point, I thought, didn't the city council make it more of a priority to get to it? Or-
Yeah, it was a priority at one time.
Yeah.
I've
Fallen from that then, I guess.
down here, when
It
you,
hasn't I mean, it still is a priority. I want to tell you, we meet every other week and we talk about it every other week and ways that we can, I just don't have any updates saying tomorrow we're going to go install they're still figuring out who's going to take on that workload in the engineering department, who's going to take that piece, where the funding's coming from. So there is pieces behind the scenes that are being worked on, but there is no funding for it at all. And there is no staffing for it right now. So
so it's a figure 8.
Could we
Right,
adopt
a circle down here and a circle up there. And my deal was, okay, if you're not gonna go ahead on doing this, can we do just phase 1 and just the circle down here?
Yeah.
That goes up around and then comes down St. Helens Road in front of the county old school or whatever, and then back here. Can we do just that and then have a little sideway kind of thing so you can go up to Nob Hill and down the stairs? And it's kind of like, well, you suggest those kind of things and they just kind of look at you like you're from Mars or something. I don't know. So I don't know where it's gonna go, but I thought a phase 1 and a phase 2 would be good. I thought that would really be good is to get it on electronically on the phone. That would be great. That's a first step. That's what you guys can do. And I think that would be a great projects for new commissioners coming on board and whatever. I mean, there's a lot of enthusiasm in doing that, especially if it's simple. So anyway,
Hopefully we'll see some pretty soon. The next item is under action items, and I try to do the follow-ups if we have somebody come and talk under visitor comments and has a problem or wants to see some action of some kind. And it looks like Lauren Take, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but she was concerned about McCormick Park safety for the dog park, for the dogs that go to that park. Because I think there was one dog that was killed a couple of years ago because it's right close to the parking area. So has anything been talked about in parks maintenance or public works about that, or has it been brought up at all?
So,
that was brought up years ago.
No,
And
okay,
there was always one person who wants that fenced, and I think it's because they're afraid of dogs. I'm not certain what the deal is. But you talk to anyone who visits, who uses that park, like I'd always go there as much as I could in the summertime and talk to those people. And then we had a person here, Elise, who reported on it. They love it the way it is, and dogs do not go out in that road, and they don't go into the a lot of people have suggested, is what happens is every now and then when a car drives up, dogs will come up to the car and they can't wait to see their friends jump out of the car door or whatever. And that's problematic.
okay, so.
I had never heard of one getting killed.
Okay.
Dad would have told me on that right away quick.
Okay, so I just wanted to follow up on that, and what your thoughts were and if something needed to be done, but that's what was brought up.
so I talked to Lauren about possibly forming a friends group for the dog park over there to come up with solutions and ideas and maybe some fundraisers and stuff, because when I first came on board, I got a quote for a fence and it was like $13,000 to fence off that area because it's quite a large area. And we can't use the neighbor's existing fence we gotta fence it, of course, because if something happened there. So it's a huge expense, which it's not out of the realm, it's just in this year's budget, we didn't have those funds to do it. Yeah, so it is definitely something, and I know it's something that staff would like to see as well, at least a portion of it, if people have dogs, that like to run off or whatever, that they can use a portion, but it is a very large dog park, and part of fencing it probably means that the footprint of that dog park will have to decrease a little bit to save on costs of the fencing and such, and they're not too keen on that either, so there's kind of a give take with it, but I will follow up with Lauren. I talked to her not long after just about, the Friends of the Dog Park group and stuff. And so she was gonna talk to them to see what sort of suggestions they all have, because there is quite a few that meet over there. It's fun to see how.
It's that culture.
Yeah.
It's a culture, you start messing with the culture, you know what happens. Dogs after you.
Okay, the next follow-up was tracking time. And I mentioned that before, so that we could use that for in-kind for parks grants. So did anybody follow up on that? And if not, we'll follow it up at the next meeting.
Tracking our time.
Yeah, tracking time for time that you, not only being here, but in your park and cleaning up or checking on it or,
I have not.
okay.
We keep track of all of ours.
I know that you do. I found that email. Brandon, have you?
It's probably not current, so I need to update it a little bit, but yeah.
Okay, just from July 1st to now.
Okay.
Because I've already reported on a lot of that in June. So, and what about you, Dana? Okay.
No, I've been really bad about that, and I need to get a time tracking system that's gonna work for me for this.
Well, we were talking about that. I've been tracking my time, especially when I have volunteer work parties on the city time tracking sheet. And so I can send that out to everybody. We also have one that we can, that I made up on Excel, real easy.
Okay.
That might be a little bit easier, but I'm gonna send that to Shauna and the commission and see which one you'd like to use.
We
If
can
you look at
maybe
this-
make a Google document too.
Yeah.
That way we can view it whenever too. Yeah.
Exactly.
That'd be great, yeah, especially if it's something I could, log on here real quick and just fill it out, because I do a little bit of work, especially with this mural project, spend, an hour here or 15 minutes.
Yeah, a lot of time, right? Printing.
I paid someone an hour.
I figured out I've got about 70 hours from July 1st to now, but I know that's not the whole amount because I'm not tracking my time on phone calls, on asking for donations, that kind of thing. So, but that's.
Emily had her hand up, so I just wanted to see, did you have something to add to that, Emily?
Yes, I was wondering, when I worked for a company called Ash Creek Forest Management, we had it was an app that tracked
My first
time.
time writing the meeting for this, so I'm
Okay.
not sure if I.
Can you
So I'll go ahead and have this
Can you
for
guys
next time, and hopefully we can get some time for all you guys that we can use for the grants. Staff report.
Emily, it looks like you're talking, but we can't hear you. So if you just want to type it in the message, maybe that will be easier for us. I'm not sure what's going on with the sound on there. Okay, so I presented the staff reports, the biannual staff report that we do for Parks and Recreation at the last council meeting. I'm sure some of you already heard that. I don't think I'll go through the whole just in with the time that it is, but it is all printed out in here. I'm more than welcome to sit down with you all and go through that as well. And it is on the council meeting as well. Lynn had made a request to see that report that staff does before we submit it to council. So I'll make sure that we have it in the meeting before, like the month before, just because just when council usually falls and I have to have that submitted. And if you guys have any questions or comments or concerns, you definitely can let me know what those things are. And I apologize for not bringing it to the last meeting, but we didn't have one in November, so that was one of the reasons. And this is the one that staff does, and then Parks and Recreation Commission has theirs coming up. I can't remember what.
Well, I just did it in June.
Okay, so every 6 months, and
Yeah.
that's what we do for staff too. Yeah, so just kind of the takeaway for all of it is, I know that we are very heavy in grants with recreation, which recreation are easier grants to get, to be honest, and you can use a lot of them for programming and staff support. Whereas parks is a lot of capital improvement projects where you do have to have matching funds or matching time, and just with the other things we were doing with finishing up McCormick Park with the benches and that sort of thing, and then also the Campbell Park Sports Court and finishing those things, we just didn't have a lot of capacity to apply for other large grants. But there is a few coming up, like I mentioned earlier, from the Oregon Parks and Recreation. We have 2 outstanding grants with the city currently with the Riverwalk project, but we can hit other buckets of grants that they have and have 2 outstanding in each bucket. And so Tori and I learned a lot about the different ways we could utilize those. So I'll be coming back with some ideas that we could use them for, and then if you all have ideas to go in, but these are more of the larger grants, like the $180,000 that they got for Campbell Park, and then I believe it's what, $800,000 for the River Walk, so things like that that are really big grants and take a lot of management too. So we'll just want to make sure we're looking at that with what grant management looks like. And then there's a few like quick hit ones, like for Dana's project that I think will be great fits. And then we'll have some other ones too on especially getting Campbell Park's playground updated, because that's one of my biggest my biggest things in the next couple of years is to get that going, because that playground is really seeing its last legs there. I remember when they opened that, I think my kids were little and they're in their late 20s now, so it's been a while.
Have you given this report to the city council then already?
I did,
Okay.
yeah, so I gave it to him last week. Yeah, last week. Normally I don't bring it in front of the boards, and but since you guys requested to have it ahead of time, I'll totally do that. Yeah, did you guys have any questions about it at all?
That this jumped out at me. Adopt a Park program volunteer outreach launching in spring 2023. Now, we have a lot of volunteer groups already, so what is this for?
So that's the thing that Melissa's been coming and talking to us about. I think she presented the Litter League and such a few meetings ago, was it? Yeah, and so it's just giving family groups ways that they can volunteer in the park, different businesses, school groups that are kind of like one and done, or maybe more than that too. But we are launching a volunteer program where people can adopt certain sections of the park. And it's not like you adopted it for the year or you're the head of this park. It's like this weekend you're adopting this area because these are the things that need to be done with it.
Okay, so we're gonna know when these people are going into the parks doing things,
Yes.
because we're already assigned to parks. The Parks Commissions, the staff here are already assigned to all the parks. So what I'm trying to understand is how we gonna know when you've got a group coming in to clean up or pull ivy or, something like that, because this is the Parks Commission and we're assigned to these parks to do that.
I'm concerned like with Lynn Park, she has a little bit of a manager plan. We have a little bit of an idea of what we're trying to do in the park. And then suddenly if we find out that somebody without the way the city works sometimes, some group's gonna come in and do this in the park. How do there needs to be continuity because they could undo something that one of our groups has been working on for quite a while if there isn't.
So I doubt it would ever be anything in Nob Hill or Dalton. This is more for like,
I'm thinking about all the parks, because just like Brandon didn't even know they were coming to the last cleanup until the last minute, like 2 days before, so we're
who
not
was coming
told.
to the last cleanup?
Pardon me?
Who?
I don't know, you had some kind of work party about a month ago, I think it was now. And so we need the communication to each one of us, when we're assigned to a park, so we know what's happening in there. It's not, mine is very passive, as far as the preserve.
Right.
So we don't have play equipment to worry about and a whole bunch of different items. But I'm thinking about what we're trying to do in the parks right now with each one of us. And if other people are coming in the parks and just go through recreation, then how do we get that message that, these people are gonna do this, is this okay? Do we want, I think that's kind of what the Parks Commission is supposed to be doing under duties and
So
responsibilities.
so what would you like the resolution to be for this?
Not really a resolution, it's what our in our municipal codes already, what we're supposed to be doing. So we don't really need somebody to adopt a park. We already know what each one of our parks needs, such as maybe Civic Pride Park that that Brandon's been trying to work on. And, Campbell, Godfrey. Now we don't have anybody over Godfrey, but it's just,
I guess I'm not under, Dana, did you have?
Yes, I was wondering, is this something where so when I did my Campbell Park presentation and at the end of, back in July, and I had a few things that I thought, this would be fantastic to be able to do over, the next however long future projects, but I'm just me. And I have, this one focus I'm working on, but that doesn't mean that there's not cleanups that need to be done. There's not additional projects that could be spearheaded by somebody else. Is this something where we could, as the commission and each one of us kind of overseeing our parks, have like a wish list or a to-do list that we would love to see things get done? And then with this Adopt the Park program, these additional resources could come in and be like, okay, so next weekend we want to do Campbell Park, and it looks like Campbell Park really needs to be weeded in this area. So our Adopt a Park program is going to go focus on that, and that way it's still kind of overseen and suggested by the commissioner who oversees that park, and it's a little bit stronger of a coordinated.
Well, in your presentation, it looks like you've got that covered really well.
For just this
For just that.
particular aspect,
And
but there's
if
100 other things that could happen at the park.
you need cleanups or you need our help at all, we will be there.
Yeah, but this is
so-
additional help. I think this is great.
Yeah, so Melissa's gonna come back with more of a game plan. We're just kind of going through the logistics of what kind of waivers need to be, what kind of equipment we need for these things. So this is like families coming in and picking up litter. This is families coming in and maybe picking or doing the weeding at the Veterans Plaza, if that's something we identify to be a need that happens, and we train them on what kind of weeds we want to be done. So it's not necessarily anything different than what's happening, because we already have people going into the park and doing these things even without us knowing or them asking permission. This is just a little bit more of us having a little bit more control over who's doing that and what sort of things we want to see, instead of somebody calling us and saying, hey, I just left 20 bags of leaves next to the veterans when we didn't know that was happening. And we're able to provide them with tools and resources for that, and some community and park pride too. Yeah.
And the basis for this was really to try and help give more of a sense of community ownership of the parks, because really the parks aren't any one person's park. They're the community's parks. And so we wanted to, because if the community has more of a pride of ownership in their parks, then they're gonna feel better about them. They're gonna take care of them more, they're gonna be more invested in them. And the week that we were gonna premiere this happened to also be Solve Oregon's Cleanup Week, which that's all about everybody in the entire state, let alone in this community, in this city, cleaning up all of our spaces, our beaches, our parks, all that. So this was more about, a family maybe wanting, maybe it's a park they frequent very often. Maybe they always go to Campbell because they really like the little elephant slide, or maybe they always go to McCormick because they like the water feature there. Maybe there's a family that really wants to be more involved. And so, just like you'd maybe adopt a highway or a stretch of highway near your home, you would adopt a park that is really personal to you. And we want to celebrate that. We want to jazz that up. We want to, put them on our Facebook and go, hey, the Smiths, look at them. They have pride in their park. They're going to help clean it up when they're out there playing for that month. They're also going to clean up some trash, and we're going to give them a vest, and we're going to give them a fancy magnet that no one else has that they can then put up with all of their state park magnets in their RV. Isn't that awesome? So we're not they're not going to be ripping out flower beds. They're not going to be undoing anything that anyone's doing. They're just going to be giving a pat on the back and a hurrah from the official Parks and Recs department that they are taking that extra step and having some pride in their parks.
So my concern is we're never notified when this is happening ahead of time. You can put it on the Parks and Rec, Facebook page. Maybe some of us might see that, but not all of us go there for that. We have used Solve before to help clean up. And just like I said, we're all assigned to our parks, so we know what the needs are. And so it's a great idea. We want the community to come in as a volunteer for whenever we need cleanups or pick up trash or anything like that. Maybe we need to sand down some of the, benches or something like that. But that's what we do, and if we can't, then we make other suggestions for that. But the thing that I hear the most is, well, I was never notified of that. I didn't know that was happening in the park. I didn't know they were gonna do this. So.
So I think I'm here, the solution is that you would like an email with what's going on, but you guys give us suggestions too on what you think the needs are.
Yeah, because just like, say if there's spraying at the Japanese garden, well, just like I was saying, well, you might have to do spot spraying in some places, and talk to Brandon. Brandon's championed the Japanese gardens, and he's working on it all the time. I mean, he's talking to people that have other Japanese gardens. He's getting a lot of good ideas, but so many times we haven't known when things are happening. I haven't had that problem at Dalton because, it's reserved and it's not really looked at, except for the parks like McCormick and Campbell and Godfrey and but the other parks that we're assigned to, we have to keep up on it. And that's why we have these asks or needs that are reflected in the, well, was reflected in the annual presentation to the council. So this is what we talk about during the year. This is what our needs are. You know, but
I was just gonna add, I like the idea of communication, especially with the Parks Commission members, just each park that you're assigned for, like David said, maybe coming up with a wish list that I think these would be good things for volunteers to help with, maybe even just little projects, weed this flower bed or weed this flower bed. And I don't know if it would be possible, we could get maybe a monthly, this is who's gonna be in the park this month and this is what they're working on, or just something like that, so where everybody's in the loop. I think that would be helpful.
because we notify everybody. I notify everybody here when we're having a work party. And other people do as well. So,
Yeah, I can definitely, I know there's a lot of user groups that just have kind of been grandfathered in, like the master gardeners that just come in and do things as they want, but
yeah,
what was that?
we have a lot more groups than that.
Yeah, so exactly, and so they don't notify, so that will be work on my part, which is totally fine, but to get that, but I know some people will just be out walking the trail and see something that needs to be done and do it, and so how much in the weeds do we wanna get with that? Because if we're setting the expectation, we wanna make sure we're setting it, so if somebody's out walking and they see there's a bunch of dog poop, is it okay for them to pick it up, or do they need to let us know that's what they're doing, or what, you know what I mean? So how much is it just a trust that these are the things that we're able to do, because some of the stuff is staff stuff too that they're doing that wouldn't necessarily, you know, they just see something that needs to be fixed, and so they fix it type of thing, so.
I think I'd say it'd be helpful for me too, to just see a little proposal that the volunteers for the month, these are the kind of things they'll be doing, just to kind of get an idea of.
We're definitely gonna
Oh,
do that.
yes, and that's coming back,
Yeah,
and
that's
even
what
when we, right, and we presented this a few months ago, and I did ask if anybody wanted to be on a subcommittee to talk about this, and I didn't hear anything from anybody, so that's another thing. Is if you wanna be in the planning of this, anytime we ask, hey, who wants to be on the, you know, to talk about it, please say yes to that too, because we love those ideas, and if we don't hear anything, then we think, oh, you know.
And when someone does come up and say, hey, I wanna adopt a park, we'd be like, these are the kinds of things you would not be doing.
Yeah.
For sure.
With the outreach that I've been doing for the mural project, I've been talking with youth-based support groups and all these like public service support, you know, organizations out here in Columbia County. And these are the kinds of projects that the coordinators are looking to get involved.
And that's why we're creating this, is because we get asked every day, I wanna volunteer for the park, what can I do? And we don't wanna just send people out willy-nilly, so we wanna have an actual guide of like, in September, these are the things that need to be done, and you know, so it will come back to you guys so that you can see those tasks and see what those look like and stuff before.
Because I also think if we have a park, especially like Novel or Dalton Lake, if we have a friends group, that we should be consulted a little bit more than some of the other parks if they don't have a group that looks after it, because.
I've got plenty of people. I've never had a problem getting people to volunteer.
Yeah.
So, and, you know, I know you don't with McCormick, but what I'm saying is under the roles and responsibilities of this commission, and we're assigned to these different parks, that's what we're supposed to be doing. If we need a little extra help, then we need to tell these groups, we need extra help on this. We need somebody to clean our garbage cans. We need, you know, whatever it is. So, so that's why that surprised me. You know, and you can get the community involved just by advertising it and keeping that. If Facebook is where you're getting these comments from, then let's put it on Facebook. You know, so
Is there a suggestion that we don't do the volunteer thing and just send them here if they wanna volunteer, and then you guys can let them know?
I'm just voicing my opinion.
No, I
on
just
what
wanna
see and what I know that our municipal code says.
Cause I'm fine with not doing the parks volunteer program, and that's one thing we could take off our plate if you just want them to come to this commission and talk about if they have wants to do, and I can send them here, and I'm totally fine with that too. So whatever you guys would prefer us to do, I'm fine with either one.
Now, I know that Nob Hill requires a lot more maintenance than almost probably any other park.
Well, and Nob Hill's one and Dalton Lake too are different in the fact that you guys do active work parties. The other parks don't really have active work parties. I mean, very rarely is there.
But I'm wondering why that is.
Because you guys
Because we're the only ones with kind of a friends group or however you.
I don't have a friend.
I know, you named it
Yeah, it's
something
just,
else.
I advertise it.
Essentially, it's the same thing.
People come
You
from
know.
Clackamas, from all kinds of places,
Yeah.
and, or they'll bring their Cub
So
Scouts.
what we need to do is get more people in
Boy
more
Scouts.
parks to adopt a park with a friends group or how Lynn's group has done theirs.
I think this
And
could
have
also
it
segue
organized.
into something like that though, because
Well, that's why this was kind of like a sprinkle into
Okay.
that. So we're not like, here's McCormick Park for a year. It's like, hey, do you guys have this Saturday from this time to this time? type
Yeah,
of thing.
anybody on the
Just
Parks
coordination.
Commission can do this, you know, all they have to do is say, wow, I need a work party here, and we're gonna be pulling ivy, or we're gonna be trimming the grass underneath the bench, or whatever it is. You know, all they have to do is create an advertisement. That's what we've done, you know, and get some people out and say, meeting this time, you know, they're gonna be working from 10 to 12, you know, on this, and that's just what you do.
I had a question, but I think your hand went up before me.
Go ahead.
Okay, so, all right, Lynn, so my question for you then would be, because I think this is a fantastic concept, and as a person like myself who, while I am actively working on a busy project for my park, I only have so much bandwidth. And I don't have the connections personally to get large volumes of volunteers in. If I were to do a cleanup, I would have to do solve, I would have to find, you know, I've been working with a cleanup Columbia County, it's just some random folks that will post on Facebook, oh, we're gonna go, you know, pick up trash in McBride today, and we go and do it, but it's not very coordinated and it's very small volume.
We work with
So-
some as well.
Yeah, however, I can promise you, I don't have for my parks requirements, right? I don't have the bandwidth to give it everything that it needs. It's already been an underserved park for a long time.
Well, maybe that's
So-
something.
So my question, my suggestion would be, I love the concept of the Adopt in the Park. I love the concept of public volunteering. I love the concept of this mutual conversation of, okay, here's my wish list, like, would you guys want to pull it off? However they want to coordinate it, I think that's fantastic. But if we feel, or if individuals on the commission feel that there are specific parks that this would not be an appropriate action for, would we be able to leave them out of this particular program? So if you feel like with Dalton, or if you feel like with Nob Hill, okay, maybe it wouldn't be in the best interest long-term for the park to have people who are not familiar with the local flora, and we don't really want people coming in there and pulling weeds. Well, because what if they pull things that aren't actually weeds because they just don't know any better? I can respect that.
Yeah.
However, I would love for a group of kids to be like, oh, we're gonna go pick up trash at Campbell Park this week, and I wouldn't
So we
want
need
to
pay
have
for
to
that.
micromanage to make that happen, nor would I want to deter them from wanting to volunteer. Because again, the intimidation factor of coming in and putting in an ask, you know, requesting from the commission to go and do a particular project, if they had a little bit easier avenue through this program, I think that we would have a much larger volume of local volunteers.
It
brought
seems
in
like
volunteer
if you have a lot of trash that needs to be picked up in your park, you could get on a list with Shauna and say, okay, I just can't do this, you know, but I know Rachel was telling me that the city expects 5 to 15 hours a month to volunteer at the parks. So if you're on the commission, you should be spending approximately that time. And that's also including coming to this meeting. So maybe that could work out for somebody else too, just like you. You know, it sounds like you've got a lot of volunteers already.
for one particular aspect of
Just
one
one
particular
thing.
project that I'm currently working on,
Mhm.
right? But it would require a lot more time from me, as I'm still getting new to this, I'm still, you know,
Right.
working my way through this park that has been neglected, you know, to coordinate all the additional efforts where you guys have been doing this for years. It's easy for you to get, you know, help with like Emily from the watershed and whatnot, but I don't have those resources even for the park that I'm overseeing. So I would be very grateful for this kind of.
So I think the best thing is if we keep hashing out the programs, we're almost ready to send it out to you all to take a look at, because we've just been looking at what that looks like, and then you guys can give us feedback from there of what you think.
That would be my proposal, is let's see it first and
Yeah.
then make a decision or work on fine tuning it. Kind of like what Dana was saying, there's been a lot of work parties, maybe there's a work party from 10 to 1. Well, my son has a baseball game at 10 to 1, I can't go to that, but maybe I could go a half hour before and pick up litter, do some small things, so a lot
It
of
would be
people.
nice to not put so many barriers there too, like you said, if you're just out there with your kids at the playground and see that there's something that needs to be done, you can look on the website and say, hey, these things are approved to be done at McCormick Park.
So I like the idea, let's see it first and then see where it goes from there.
Anything else on the staff report?
So the one thing I did want to bring up is on your, on the table there was an update, possible update to the IGA, and this was a request that Brandon and I were talking about doing a free treatment in the Japanese garden. And Scottsblues Bay Watershed would amend the IGA to include this, and then this would come out of the funds that were already allocated for the spray treatment or for the other work that's being done. And sure where it is on.
And also Emily is leaving the Scottsblues Bay.
Oh,
You know, Shauna, if she was able to go to the site and inspect it, or
Yeah.
they find a lot of.
There's her.
And she's here, but I can't, there's something wrong with the sound, Emily, and I don't know how to fix it. So I apologize for that.
Could I put her on speakerphone if I got her on the phone?
Yeah.
This is gonna be a new addendum or?
Emily, do you wanna, Howard's gonna call you really quick, okay, and then, does that work?
yeah, that works just fine.
Call Emily Martin.
Yeah, so this will be like Emily Martin, the IGA that we have currently, and just pull that into the monies that we already have allocated, so it wouldn't be an additional
Hey,
fund.
Emily. Yeah, I'm gonna put you on speakerphone though, hang on.
Perfect.
Okay, there you go, you're on speakerphone and it's up all the way.
Hi, thank you. So what was the question that you had, Liz?
My question, Emily, was, were you able to visit the site, and was there a lot of stuff that you saw that would need spraying?
I did not see a lot of poison oak that needed spraying. So I found about 3-4 poison oak canes. Now, I did not go digging through the blackberry. I only was able to see poison oak in the exposed areas where the blackberry had been removed. It's possible that there is some type of poison oak underneath the blackberry that I just couldn't visibly see because of how dense the other areas are. But it doesn't look like it's going to take a lot of time, effort, or material to remove it. Now, I know poison oak can be treated in what they call a stump cut treatment, where you cut the cane, or excuse me, you cut the vine just above the ground and you paint the top of the surface with herbicide. Whatever is up above the top of the cut will die off eventually, and ideally the herbicide should suck its way down into the root system and kill the roots of the plant. I've seen poison oak be treated in the winter time, which is why this is something that is doable within the time frame of before the end of January. And as long as it is approved by the city, I think so, and as long as, you know, it is continued to be approved by the Watershed Council, I don't see this being a problem to go forward on, if that makes sense.
So my question here is the cost here, will that potentially change? So if she said there's only 4 or 5 canes that she identified, if she gets in there and doesn't find as much as she thought it would, will it be cost go down, or is that a set price? How does that work?
Who's gonna spray?
So right now, it's set based on the amount of canes that I saw. I'm not planning to go into the blackberry to try to find additional poison oak. So I do not see the estimates that I created changing. call just to make sure that this can cover not just the cost of the herbicide, but also the cost of having our herbicide license and having our external costs just being able to spray.
And it's Emily who will be spraying.
I know I don't speak for everybody, but I would love to have it taken care of just because I would love to get more involvement and more volunteers in there, but I would hate to have them experience the fun that I had to experience with the poison oak. So I'd like it to be taken care of, but whether everybody agrees, it's you voice your opinions.
There's no other questions. We'll go into the counselor's report. Are there any?
Thank you, Emily.
I think I would like you guys all be in agreement to that. Is everyone in agreement to going ahead and moving forward with it, amending the IGA and including that piece in there?
That piece, yes.
Yes, okay. And I'll bring that, or I'll send out the updated IGA once I have that. Right. Morton, how are you? Counselor's report.
Your last one, your last one.
I don't have anything to say.
Hi.
Best of luck to everyone. This is your last one, huh? Are you gonna join the commission? Should we interview you too?
Feel free to give your 2 cents forth after this when you're a
Exactly.
citizen.
Well, you guys are on a cutting edge, and this is one of the only, I've sit on a lot of boards, and one of the ones I'm doing now is I have a committee that is doing land acknowledgements, and with that, I see a great excitement for the park land that that's here. A lot of times, so many people don't even think about what's happened before. What's the magic date? 1860. Not much history is written about indigenous peoples. And so what it's going to take is an indigenous person to document through tribal knowledge and nation knowledge and community knowledge of what's happened in certain specific areas. And I find that really exciting. And so I'm doing that up at Mount Hood for Timberline, Friends of Timberline. And that's pretty interesting. But along the way, I'm finding I can't stay away from here. So the Chinook Nation is not defined. It's like we define things. It's like, what do you call it? We call it a region or an area or whatever, made up of tribes and communities that are neither defined either. They could be families, they could be relatives, they could be whatever. They could dress alike, they could look alike. Their diets could be very similar. And so that's how we see things, and that's how the indigenous peoples see things, as saw their communities as well. Did you know that one of the largest communities on the Columbia River is right across the way, and it's called Kathlepato, and the word Kath must be have a water significance or whatever, because there's also a star, which is another nation where Warrior Rock is, in a sense, and goes all the way over to the Grand Ronde Nation, to the coast. And so, that's considered a nation. And as in that nation, there's communities and tribes, and but the community over here is comprised of different tribes, different peoples, and then depending on when the fish were running up the Lewis and the Lake River, it would be massive. And so I just find that really interesting. And so in that sense, I think there's a challenge for individuals to be looking at our parks. This is also as an interpretive area of what has taken place there, you know, before Lewis and Clark got here. And because we have that knowledge, and those interpretive signs and those kinds of things are placed around parks and that kind of thing. But wow, this really opens up a large window, especially when we are carrying cell phones around and we have all that information in the palm of our hand. And so that's kind of why I think it's so interesting to be on the cutting edge. You are. I mean, you have projects that can just be amazing. I mean, and stores like that I got open just 6 months ago, a year ago, probably, about doing this indigenous work for land acknowledgement for Timberline. So just sharing that. There's so much that is in front of you. It's mind-boggling to me that what you're doing. I would say, if I ever had any suggestions, I would say, get rid of the paper, you grab a cell phone and get to know it. And I hope the council embraces. I hope the council embraces that as well. That's where our communication sources lie. 7-year-olds tell you that, and 9-year-olds tell you can see it happen. It's interesting to me. I don't have much else to say other than this has been 16 years in this room. Once a month has been encouraging to me, and most encouraging in the last 8-10 years. Before that, there were knockdown dragouts in this room regarding girls soccer and baseball and soccer, and who wanted the field and what damage was being done to this field, whatever. It was not a good experience to see. It's like I don't know why I get into these places where I'm always breaking people up. I just kind of like, hey, hold on. And that's what it used to be like. I mean, and the mission, the master plan, oh my God, it was done on paper like this. I mean, notebook paper and just all thrown together. And the big park was the one out where Columbia Boulevard and Highway 30 meet. There was a park there. What? I came on here. And so I asked one of the, it might have been John Brewington, I'm not certain. I asked, what is this? And the master plan was just, there was nothing there. It was a joke. And so when you start thinking of the highway strip as a park, I thought, hey, hold on, something's really wrong here. And that's kind of what I inherited when I came aboard. And that highway strip was, there must have been someone who was a junior chamber, a JC, a junior chamber member, because that's where the JC building was on that corner and on that kind of intersection, just right across from the rail station there, or where the chamber is. So anyway, seen a lot of unbelievably wonderful improvement, and the communication that goes on in here is pretty noteworthy. Very noteworthy. Proud of the staff. This group. I've been a team builder all my adult life. That's what I've done. I did it in the military. built teams. When I got out, that's why I coached for 30-some years. Built teams in the fall, winter, and spring. Unbelievable. And so that's what I do. And that's to me, that's interesting. Sometimes I'm pretty quiet about it, and I'm more of an observer than I am a communicator verbally, but I'm just impressed with this team. This team is amazing. I mean, you guys are accomplishing a lot. Not even that, those mentions when I first came on, they don't even come close. Not even close, not even in the ballpark. But anyway, we've got a great park system. It's very juvenile and has a long ways to go, and that's going to be that's exciting.
Keep that in mind. I just want to say personally, thank you so much for the passion that you've had for so long for parks and the invaluable information that you give us and the guidance and the wisdom. And I just appreciate it so much, and it's a pleasure working with you.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope whoever takes my place on the council is going to
We could get you
quite
a
as much as I do. Oh, look.
small token of your appreciation.
Oh my gosh, some perfume.
Yeah.
For anyone who's looking, I splashed this stuff on at the meetings, right?
And Doug, also, I want to thank you for all your years of mentoring this group and mentoring me and making me understand things more.
Well, that's wonderful, Howie. Yeah, we've had our ups and downs, and mostly ups, and we've known each other for a long time, haven't we?
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he was my high schooler.
Scott, thank you. Brandon, you take care of these guys, okay?
Try.
It's my word.
Good
Well,
group.
same thing with Brandon. It's been a pleasure working with you. And again, your listening abilities and reflecting and the ideas that you present, and it's been very helpful. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We've got a little something for you too.
Thank you very much.
Now that you're overlord.
I'm gonna miss you guys.
Trying to keep you hungry.
Yeah.
Don't be a stranger.
No, he won't. Okay, any other business at 6:44?
I've got like 30 seconds I can wrap.
Okay.
Mainly, I'm probably gonna start doing some mowing of grass clumps. And just doing, there's a lot of non-native clumps of grass that I'm gonna start trying to snap, so if anybody asks, if I just put that out there for you. And then also eventually start thinking about, because I think we need to start planning above and beyond a little bit of the Parks and Trails Master Plan is where we really do see Nob Hill Nature Park going in the next 10 to 15 years with all the development that's going on down here and stuff. I see a lot of things that we need to probably start seriously thinking to try to plan for the type of people and traffic that park probably will be getting in the next few years. I almost want to say that I think it could be one of the parks here that's probably going to have the biggest transformation of people and the surrounding area of any park here in the city. Got a long meeting, so I'll shut up there. Did you follow this?
Anybody else?
My only thing, it sounds like everybody already knows, but I met with John and Kathy, Rachel and Lisa the other day. And they said, are you planning on resigning from the Parks Commission? And I said, I kind of assumed I would have to. And they said, well, we haven't really had this happen before, but that's what they would recommend. So with that, I will be resigning as of January 4th. I'm being sworn into the city council. So I've thoroughly enjoyed this group and working with everybody and getting to know everybody, and look forward to continuing with that in a little different capacity. So thank you all for all the hard work that you do, and all the good that you do in the community. It's appreciated.
Brandon.
Thank you.
This is one of our longest meetings.
Yeah.
Very long.
Anybody else?
Ever.
Anything
I
else?
still have my 12 points from last time.
I'm gonna go ahead and,
If nothing else, the meeting is adjourned.